Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the ATK Pro Series brought to you by Mercedes-Benz. My name is Ernest Page, and this is division qualifying at Barcelona, Catalonia. I am so excited for this one because we are racing GT Sport tonight, folks, and tonight is the division qualifying. And welcome to the show. We are about to get started, but first I need to introduce the man that will be joining me today in the commentary booth. We got Marius Roberts here today. Marius, welcome to Barcelona. Welcome to GT Sport.
This is at least something I kind of know a little bit about, because that's kind of all the online racing that I used to do in the good old days when I had hair and was thin was Gran Turismo. You know, that's kind of where it started, and I think there's a massive fan base. You know, the whole Gran Turismo thing, I think, is where it really all started, I think, for so many guys. Yeah. So I think for ATK and the Pro Series for 2021 to expand like this, I think is really cool, because we're reaching out to a whole bunch of new guys. The problem is, though, you and I are now really going to be in the dwang here, because these are people we have no idea who they are. They've also got fanboy names, so it's not like we used to. That is who the guy is. So I know we're going to be finding our way a little bit, but we're not doing it on our own. We've got Vanna who's joining us, and obviously, Vanna, this is your home turf. These are the guys that you've been racing with. You know a lot about GT Sport. Nice to have you joining us on the broadcast and helping us find our way.
Yeah, good evening, guys. It's an honor to be here, and excited for this journey with ATK, along with Motorsport South Africa, Mercedes-Benz, and of course the GTS team as well. Yeah, we've been running the Gran Turismo South Africa for probably the last 3 years, I think. The WhatsApp groups date back to 2017. And for a long time, it was literally, a quiet group of friends that were doing some weekly online races. And it just by word of mouth, it expanded to a community that now consists of over 250 members.
Sure.
We generally host 4 seasons a year. So we work our year in quarters. Each season will be between 7 and 9 rounds. And we try and mix it up a little. The beauty about Gran Turismo is it gives us a massive variety of classes of cars that we can race. So, for instance, the current season that's coming to an end now is based on Super Formula cars, which is Japan's version of Formula 2 cars. Yeah. That's been going quite well. But then we'll generally have some late reveal races where the guys find out an hour before the time what the car and track combo is. We'll have team events. So we try and keep it spicy for the guys.
Well, Vanna, it's certainly going to be spicy this year with the different versions of Mercedes that we're going to be racing. We spoke about this yesterday, Marius. I know that you are excited about that, about the fact that we got a one-make series. I love one-make racing.
But that's what you and I were talking about it yesterday, and Vanna, what you were saying now, the little curveballs where the guys don't get an opportunity to go and do lap after lap after lap in a set car at a set track where you surprise them. Obviously, with this being super competitive this year, we're not throwing in any surprises, but at least now we're going to see the fastest guys on console racing in the same car on the same track at the same day. So it's not about did I pick the right car. I personally think that is a really cool formula and a good format, because yesterday most of our commentary feed was taken up with new changes with Assetto Corsa and suddenly balance of performance, and now this car that was fast last year isn't fast this year. You don't have any of that nonsense with GT Sport.
No. So absolutely, my favorite races are the one-make races where everyone is in the same car. And what we have also, another thing in GT Sport which you don't necessarily have across other titles, is what they call the Vision Gran Turismo range of cars. So that is literally where Polyphony Digital, who are the creators of Gran Turismo, will go to a manufacturer, Mercedes in this case, and they will literally say, throw the rule book out the window and come up with a design, and they literally build physical models of this. And I think one of our races is actually in the AMG Vision Gran Turismo, which is Merck's view on what the ultimate car would look like.
Oh, I love that.
And that's going to be very exciting. And then, of course, we also have the beast that is the Mercedes Formula 1 car. So one of our races will be in the Formula 1 car at Magnificent Spa. So it's going to be a fantastic season, I think.
You know what's cool for me as well, Vanna, with this is that it actually gives you a very interesting view on an all-rounder from a driving perspective, because our guys in Assetto Corsa are dedicated to, basically they're spending maximum time in GT3 cars, so they've got them dialed in, they've got their setups and everything done right. But I like this because you're going, sure, we're obviously sticking to Merc, but I mean, I know tonight we're in the SLS AMG, which I mean is what, 2011, probably 2012. There's going to be new cars. There's Formula One, so you've got aero, then you've got road going type cars. So it really does mix it up. And I think from a driving perspective, it showcases what I do think is an all-rounder, a real balanced driver at the end of the day. So I like that. It's another cool take on a competitive format.
Well,
Absolutely, Marius.
I was getting excited earlier on, Werner, because the pursuit of excellence in something like this, when you've got this one make thing, when you've got a manufacturer coming on board saying, I want to make the best possible device for going fast. It's a very exciting prospect, and it's so cool that a company like Gran Turismo can go to a manufacturer and have that conversation.
Jeez, I just hope none of them are electric, because I mean that's one thing we don't want to see. I like the soundtrack. Can you imagine us all watching toasters racing around? But anyway,
yeah, that's going to be a bit quiet.
It's not going to be happening.
I'll tell you guys on that point of electric cars. I think it was in our second season, way back in the start of 2018, I think. Someone thought it was a good idea to race around an oval track, basically a NASCAR track with BMW i3s.
Dude.
And to this day, it is still a massive joke, because that was the most painfully boring race that I think all of us have ever been involved in.
But Vanna, do you remember when you had to do, like, when you were trying to finish Gran Turismo in the old days, and you had to do those like 200 kilometer, 500 kilometer oval races, and it generally would have been in something super slow. And I mean, I know some guys would actually just walk away, just leave the car on the barrier and put literally on your little pedal box, put a brick on it and come back, go make yourself some coffee, come back later. And it's like, painful. So I can't imagine doing an R3 around an oval track. No ways.
No, absolutely. It's the same as the elastic trick around the trigger on your PlayStation controller to get mileage points.
Exactly. All of them. But listen, none of that tonight, because obviously the circuit we're at is a cracker from a driving perspective. The guys love driving it. But for me, it's a bloody boring racetrack when it comes to getting cars together in a race, because quite difficult from an overtaking perspective. I know the bikes have a job. We were actually at the circuit a few years ago with Monster watching MotoGP, which was really good, but quite a tricky track from a racing perspective. What are your thoughts, Van, having spent time on this? I mean, for me, two critical corners. Actually, the final turn onto the start finish, because if you don't get a good exit on that on the long straight, you can be vulnerable into turn 1. And then also for me, 7 running up to 8 and 9, crucial, because 10 is heavy under braking as well. So if you get that run up that hill and through that fast right-hander, you'll have another opportunity for overtaking. That's how I see it. I don't know for you playing in the game, if it's a little bit different in that format.
Marius, you're 100% correct. So the reason we chose Catalunya as the qualifier track is because it does take a fair amount of skill. We want to see the best of the best guys in our top division, and Catalunya certainly you need to be at your absolute maximum best to get a good time out of this. I agree with you on the boring racetrack from a racer's point of view, and that's why it's a qualifier and not one of our races throughout the series. But I completely agree with you. That final chicane before the last turn, what you will notice is we do run our lobbies on strong track limit penalties. So what's going to happen is guys will try and take liberties to try and get the quickest exit out of that turn, and just before the line you'll see a penalty pop up and that guy's lap will be invalidated. So it really is a fine balance. I agree with you. And then also that run, like you mentioned, up to the hard braking zone at 10, getting through the right line there, and throttle modulation even in a sim is crucially important.
There's a lot of that at Catalunya, because a lot of the corners, even like final turn, is like it seems to go on forever, and you can get caught up in getting on the power a little bit too early. Same thing running through turn 3, the long right-hander, even turn 4, Repsol. A lot of those corners, it really is about very, very little throttle input, waiting, and then gently coming on and easing back on the power. So you're right, technical, very clever that you guys have gone here from a qualifying perspective and not from a race. But yeah, it's going to be tricky to get the perfect lap because there are a lot of places that you can trip up, especially with the track limits you're talking about.
Yeah, the perfect lap on this track, as you said, Marius, there's a lot of throttle modulation going on here. Vanna, can you talk to us about the car that's being chosen? It's the SLS AMG GT3, specifically the 2011 model. The SLS long wheelbase, Marius, I'm sure you spent time in this car as well. Long wheelbase car, very low slung, old school GT3 car. This car surely has to be a bit tricky to drive around this track, Vanna.
Ernest, that's why they ended up making the GT car, their new version, because that SLS was actually a little bit too hardcore when you wanted to exploit the limits. I loved it because it really was a driver's car, but obviously with their new GT, they've really made it more Porsche friendly in terms of its accessible performance to everybody, whereas that SLS was a machine. You literally are sitting on the rear axle, got that long nose, weight in the front, and by the time you've realized the back is on its way out, it's generally too late. So it's going to be a tricky car around here.
In the words of Chris Harris, it was gone before I knew it was going. And
Exactly.
I think we're going to see a lot of that tonight then. I'm excited because I want to see if these guys are going to be able to keep this car on the track. Vanna, what are your thoughts? I know that you've got a guy in here named RTA Donkey who is we've got 4 minutes left before we go racing, and your guy RTA Donkey, you say that's one of the guys to watch today. But with regard to the difficulty of driving the car, is that the case in game?
Absolutely. So Marius was spot on. This car is from 2011, and it really is a boat, even in the game. It has no front end. So what the guys will be doing is probably running 80% brake balance to the rear, just to get it rotating within the corners. There'll be a lot of lifting to make sure that the turning happens. But these guys are used to this kind of thing. So we specifically wanted to run both the GT3s. So we are running the other version, the newer version of the Mercedes GT3, like Mario says, the Porsche friendly version, in our very final race at Nürburgring. We just thought that would be a fitting into the season. But this SLS is going to be fun to watch around the track. You'll definitely see some drifting. And mentioning RTA Donkey in Division 1 coming up shortly. I know that in practice he was running times about half a second quicker than anyone else already. And he's been spending most of his time on ACC on console. So he's put in minimum time for this. But he's super talented. So excited to see what he can do with this boat.
This RTA Donkey, guys, could you explain to us and the listeners?
Sure. So Stefan Wessels is from Cape Town. He is a very, very, very new sim racer to the community. Like I was saying to you earlier, Ernest, he literally was still racing Forza on Xbox about a year and a half ago. And he went to a friend's house who made him sit in a rig and play Gran Turismo on the PlayStation. And within the following week, Stefan had bought a PlayStation, he bought Gran Turismo, he bought a rig, and he bought a Thrustmaster T300, and he hasn't looked back. In his first full year with us, we had 4 individual seasons and a little fun team season at the end of last year, and he managed to win 3 of those 5 seasons. The team that he is part of, RTA, it's a fairly new team in the South African circles, but it's a branch of a very prominent European team. And RTA, branched off and then started their own thing probably midway through last year. And as team members in France, in Italy, in Belgium. So the guys compete in something called GT Fusion, which is probably the biggest Gran Turismo tournament in the world, against all sorts of global competitors. So, and Donkey is definitely one of the superstars within that team.
Oh. Well, speaking of superstars, I think we're going to be having a lot of those popping up in this league.
Ernest, he just picked a really crap name. I mean, Donkey doesn't sound very fast. You know what I mean? So it's like, I know Ernest is going to help us a lot. We've been given a screen grab now, so at least we have the guys' actual names. But just before we go into our first division qualifying run, what are the guys all running regulation-wise? Yeah, so is it? I'm assuming no traction control, no stability control, or what is allowed in your division?
All the assists are off. So there's a number of assists that the guys can use. TC, line assist, corner, cones on the corners, braking markers, that sort of stuff. All those sort of things have been switched off. The only thing we do allow in Gran Turismo is ABS.
Okay.
Because these cars without ABS, is ridiculous, and especially not so much in a seeding event because you shouldn't have incidents and contact. But in a race, when everyone's in a bunch, you want the guy behind you to have ABS and not lock up his wheels.
Well, we should be starting shortly. I'm looking through the comments over here on the YouTube channel. Thanks for commenting, guys. Keep those comments coming. I'll be talking to you guys a bit more later on. But first, we will be going straight into qualifying. Here we go, folks. Welcome to round 0, as they say. The division qualifying for the Mercedes-Benz ATK.
But how nice does that car actually look? I just don't see too many of them around anymore. I'm looking, I'm going, oh, the good old days. And I think that's what this format is going to bring us over the next 6 rounds, and obviously our qualifying round now today is getting to look at some of the best cars that Mercedes-Benz have produced over the years. So we were talking about it yesterday. I mean, listen, just the timing couldn't have been better, with the Seca Corsa making the Merc one of the cars that everybody wants to go to. Now they're the title sponsor for us. We've got a spin in the back, and it's a big one that's gone off as well. To actually being able to showcase their cars in the GT Sports category, I think it is really, really cool. Van, a quick one. What happens if is it same like in a Seca Corsa, straight back to pits if you minute?
No, so I think we have set light damage for the seating lobby. Obviously, for the races, the damage will be on heavy, which means you will have to get the damage repaired. But we run our qualifying sessions. It's literally a 30-minute free practice session, so the guy can just sort of press option on his controller and go back to the pits and start again.
So he doesn't have to lap there. He
doesn't have to lap. He can literally just go back and start again.
It's convenient.
But then he has to redo an outlap. So the first, obviously, the outlap will be untimed.
That's fine.
We also have not, we've switched off fuel and tire settings, because then what happens for the first 25 minutes is guys literally just cruising around in second gear, trying to burn off as much fuel and become light. So this way, everyone will be on the pace and flat out for the entire 30 minutes.
Well, that's what we've come here to see. You know what I mean? I hate that Formula One mentality of fuel-saving mode. It's not an endurance race. It's a bloody sprint race. So let's go and race. And that's where like MotoGP nails it. Because it's like pick the tire compound that works best for you. Put in just enough fuel to make it in and go fast. And that's what's cool. That's what you want to see in qualifying too.
Oh, look at these corners flowing one into the next. We are now on board with RTA Safa. And now I'm going to go to my cheat sheet now and try and quickly find, that's Kyle Oosthuizen there in the Mercedes. And I got to say, Marius, Kyle Oosthuizen in the Mercedes, and specifically this SLS Mercedes, it's really cool to see, as you just to reiterate, I got to say it again, to see these heritage cars going around the circuit. It's great.
But they've almost become collector's cars, because of them being so brutal and so hardcore in the real world application, and yeah, they're super cool for me. I mean, I think they look amazing. I like the liveries too. I'm assuming Van, the guys can design their own livery for their cars, like they do in other formats.
Correct. Yeah. So GT Sport has a very big livery component, and we actually have guys dedicated in our community who spend hours and hours every day designing liveries. And some of the replicas they come up with is incredible. So this is a custom livery designed by the racing team Astra, the RTA team. And what will happen is this kind of format of livery will be slapped on all of the cars competing globally. So what you'll see is we've got Donkey on screen now. So this is Stefan. The only difference between his and Carl's livery will be the numbers, and also that Donkey will have his own unique helmet design, where Carl will have his own one.
Wow, helmet design as well. He's going all the way over those curves, really riding those curves here. The car able to do so quite clearly, and currently he's 10 seconds down. He was very slow. He was really pacing himself, lining himself up for this lap. But you're saying this could be the guy to watch. Now, I'd love to stay on board with him, and let's watch a lap of the man they call RTA Donkey, Kyle Oosthuizen.
No, this is Stefan, I think.
Stefan, yes.
Yeah.
Stefan.
Safa is Kyle. So he is one of the founding members of the RTA team, along with a guy in France. and it's quite funny when you join these guys as their PlayStation party chats when they're competing globally, and you have all these Frenchies on the party chat, and no one can understand a word except for one French guy who translates everything into English for us and translates everything that we say back into French for the rest of the team.
Just, I was to say, just speak Afrikaans, and they're generally quite helpful, the French are. I want to check, I saw the yellow flag coming up now, so would that have been someone just spinning and then obviously no overtaking, but that wouldn't really qualify, would really be an issue?
If there was someone slower than you, and you do, even in a practice session, you do ignore a yellow flag, you will get a penalty. How the penalties work is it immediately pops up on your dash, and you have to burn that penalty off before you cross the finish line, otherwise it will invalidate the following lap. So you literally have to slow down. So that could be a reason why Donkey's lap time was slow as well. He could have had a track limit penalty, which he had to slow down for. If you don't and you cross the line with that penalty, it will double up, add it to your lap time, and invalidate the next lap. So you don't want to ruin 2 laps.
Wow, okay, that's actually getting quite technical then in that case. I mean, the guys really do need to respond to that. There's no sorry sir, I didn't know, I didn't see. It's quite clearly defined in game.
So currently we've got RTA Safa, that's Kyle Oosthuizen in first position. Right behind him, RTA Donkey, now Stefan Wessels dropped down to second, but only 0.6 of a second behind him, 0.6 of a second. We now got the timing monitor, and here we go. All the details we need, and just behind that we got DMRE, who is, according to my records over here, Johan de Jager. So far, 0.7 of a second separating the top 3. It's pretty close so far.
Yeah, I'm just having a look. I'm trying to get my head around all the timing and seeing who's who in the zoo. Because I know Van was talking earlier that in the practice sessions earlier, Stefan was like clocking times half a second quicker. Obviously, we haven't seen the best of him just yet. But yeah, I'm obviously nowhere near to even guessing what would be a good lap time around here in this car. You know, we know from last year, because we did run around at Catalunya in a set of course, and I'm trying to remember what those GT3 times were with the current car. So, Vanna, what is a good time? What are the guys kind of benchmarking for here?
Look, I can tell you, Carl's sorry about that. Carl's 1 minute 44 flat is going to be very, very tough to beat. That is a really super quick time. I believe Donkey has done a 43.8 in practice, so he could potentially beat that. But I would expect the times, a really good time would be a mid 44. So where Donkey is round about now, along with Johan in third place, I would say that's probably what the times we're looking at for the top guys.
And how are we seeding this? So basically, we're running 3 divisions now tonight. Are the top 10 fastest guys going through to the pro division when we get into our first round? And what happens to the other guys? Are there opportunities for them to re-qualify to make it into pros? How are you guys running that system?
So basically everyone who qualifies tonight, they go into a spreadsheet from slowest or fastest to slowest. The top 14 guys will then go into what we call Pool 1 or Division 1. The next 14 into Division 2, and the next, and so on. And then what happens is we run a promotion relegation system. So after each race, the top 3 guys from the pool below move up, and the bottom 3 guys from the pool above move down. They literally swap divisions. We also stagger our points. So the winner of Pool 2 will get the same amount of points as 10th place in Pool 1. And moving down, the winner of Pool 3, same as 10th place in Pool 2. So you're never really out of it after the qualifiers or after the seeding event. But then from there, it becomes who is the best racer, because then consistency counts for everything.
Yeah. Sure. But I mean, got a big spin over there. Who is that? That's Brandon. Brandon Clormore. So that's a first look at Brandon, because obviously we've been tracking RTA Donkey and RTA Staff are the teammates there, but it's nice to see a couple of the other guys as well. How long has Brandon been involved in GT Sport?
Brandon is brand new. He literally, this Pro Series is the first event that he's registered for.
Cool.
So he must have gotten hold of us on social media. When I was doing the division settings and just sending the guys some messages today, I had to literally put his name in my cell phone because I didn't have him before. So he's definitely brand new. I know absolutely nothing about him.
But that is
except
so
for his-
cool, though, Vanna. But that is super cool because that's what we've seen. And Ernest, you can talk about that too. Like last year, we saw guys that started out and they were running in like the third race, so like the amateurs. And by the end of a season, the guys are knocking on pro door and winning pro am rounds. And that is what you want. I mean, when you're spending time in a format like this with guys that are really on it, it's just going to raise your level of competitiveness as well, and that's what we want to see, is new guys being brought into sport. And I think that is what is cool for MSA getting involved in our series now as well, is to legitimize what we're doing, that the guys can actually understand and appreciate that this is being viewed in a proper professional light.
So far, Brandon looking good out there, and I mean, he was sliding the car around in that opening lap, but now certainly seeming to be getting the hang of the car. 3.7 seconds down at the moment, and this car looks like, to me, this car does look like a bit of a handful, Marius. The car is moving around all over the place constantly. He's just got a penalty.
Yeah, because he exceeded track limits big time when he exited through Capsa. But when I look at this, it feels to me like maybe he's actually busy playing with the normal controller. If you know what I mean, there was lots of movement, left, right,
and
very difficult for him to adjust.
This is the thing about, somebody's gone off there. This is the thing about Gran Turismo, the accessibility that it provides. It allows anybody, anywhere, who has a console, who has a cousin with a console, the ability to get access to the game. And that is the big difference between PC and console, that you've got a lot more people able to get to give it a go. Oh, somebody hits the bumps.
Yeah, that's Yuri Engelbrecht. I love the livery on this car, but you can see there's that penalty immediately, taking a big bite of that sausage curb. So he's now obviously got to slow down so he doesn't clock that and carry that over onto the next lap, which he's obviously now gone and sorted himself out with. But yeah, I suppose, Vanna, that's a fair question. Are there any guys actually not racing with a proper rig? Are there guys that will even attempt to do this with controller?
Absolutely. Gran Turismo does offer that opportunity. I think the current, the Super Formula season we're busy running at the moment, the top 5 guys in the standings are all on controller. We've had a couple of guys that chose not to compete in that season because they want to focus on the Pro Series, which is understandable. But you will see some really quick guys tonight, even on controller. In Division 2, there's a guy called BKP who's 17 years old, and he's already winning races overseas.
That's insane.
And there's a brand new guy in Division 3 called Sir Ian. He's also quite new, also super quick, also on controller. Serious Sam, who's very busy leading our current season, he's on a controller. So there's a good mix between controllers and wheels.
But you know what, that's so cool, because it reminds me, I don't know if you guys recall last year when obviously sim racing really exploded thanks to COVID, and there was that story about Jacques Villeneuve who was smashing all of the oaks, and he was literally playing off his keyboard on the PC. He didn't have any fancy anything, and he was like kind of really giving the guys a proper revving on it. But for me, I think that is crucial, and why it's really good to have you guys joining us as well, because Ernest, you touched on it, the accessibility is way broader. I mean, I know the console comes with a price, but I mean, for sure, so does the PCs that you guys need to run to play a set course and that type of stuff. But you don't need to go and spend the crazy money that guys are spending on rigs. You can be quite competitive. I know I played my Gran Turismo on both, and it's quite difficult to get the throttle sensitivity right on the controller, that you want to be on power, off power. There's very, very difficult to find that sweet spot, because it is pretty much on or off, and that takes some getting used to.
Yeah, that takes a lot of getting used to. And as we look at the times here, we still got RTA Safa, that's Kyle, in first position. RTA Donkey, the person we talked about earlier on, Stefan, still down in third, but
he's popped up now. Look at that. He's just popped up with he's 0.1 off of that. So look how close. A 144.147 and a 144.160. So I mean, obviously the teammates pushing each other flipping hard there, which is really, really cool to see. And I'm sure we'll get some on-track action from a couple of the other guys. As we were saying right in the beginning, if you've joined us on the stream, this is new for Ernest and I in terms of we don't know who these guys are. We obviously spent a lot of time with the Santa Corsa guys last year. We got to know them so well after we ran 12 rounds, and so many of them were obviously back yesterday when we did our divisional qualifying. But this is new for us, and I think that's what we love as well. We're looking at some old school cars definitely exceeding track limits there, so another penalty definitely
Notice
coming
how
up on
loose
screen.
that car got there, Marius. Did you
Oh
notice
man,
that?
yeah, but you know the problem is that corner. You must. I mean, I stood there watching the superbikes. Watching MotoGP through there, and I mean, there's a proper rollover. So the car's going to get super light as you come over that crest,
Yes,
which is why it's
yes.
so difficult and to keep it on track. It's very easy to exceed that track limit, and then you really are going to end up with a very, very loose car on the rear end. So tricky corner, but it's so crucial because you've got that little straight before you get the heavy braking, where there is very definitely a chance for an overtake. So we saw a couple of penalties being issued now over that turn 9. It's not an easy one.
What a long straight there. We just saw one of the cars head onto the main straight. And one of the things Werner was saying earlier on as we head into the infield section of here is that these cars have 80% brake bias to the rear.
Yeah, but you know, this is tricky. I mean, I suppose that's also for me where, there is a big difference between what you feel and what you experience in the real world driving this car. And what he was talking about is how difficult it is to get the front rotated. And that's a very simple thing. It's just weight. If you look at that long nose and how much weight, that whole big engine sitting over that front end, it's going to be very, very difficult to get the car to stop and turn like you want it to. So that is why the guys will try and find ways to work on the rotation of that. Interesting that the brake bias has been set up like that. I don't imagine the guys would do that in the real world of racing, set it to that level, but they would find other ways to get the car to rotate in terms of the tire pressures that they're running. But that's where the throttle patience is crucial in a car like this, because surprisingly there's going to be that fine line between if you get on the power too early through a fast corner, it's actually just going to wash. The front end is just going to understeer. But in the tight stuff, if you get on the power too early, the back's going to step out. So that is what makes this car such a tricky car to drive.
So tricky to drive as we head up the hill now, 143, 150 k's an hour. Watch how quickly the acceleration climbs on this car. The driver of this car is hitting the limiter though. As he hits the limiter, he changes up as we head into the tight, long right-hander. You gotta wait it out here, ease on the gas. I mean, such patience is required as we now make our way down the hill here. Such patience is required on all of these corners, Marius.
Yeah, but that's what we said earlier. I mean, we were on board there with Shaheen Mohammed, so nice to see a couple of the other guys lapping as well. Nice to be on board with him. What we were saying earlier, you speak to the drivers, they love this track, they love the challenge of it, but they'll also tell you it's a crap track to go and have a race, which, like Werner said, that's why they've chosen to do qualifying, much like we did yesterday with Laguna Seca. Not a great track for exciting racing, but a challenge from a qualifying perspective, because you've got off-camber corners at Laguna Seca, very, very easy to run into the walls. There's no big runoff there. You come to this track and it's a patience game. When do you get on the throttle? Because a lot of the corners are very, very long, maybe late apexing as well. So nice to see the guys coming to grips with it. But Safa putting in a really, really good time. A low 144, which I think is going to be a tough time to beat. But Stefan's got close, 0.1 off of that time.
Yeah, unbelievable stuff so far. And the circuit, again, as we go through the first section over here, this circuit, that final section, it's make or break. If you make any sort of mistake on that final complex section over there, the one corner goes into the next, into the next, into the next. Any tiny mistake there and the lap is done. So you feel that as a driver, you feel that as you head into the final sector. You know you're up on the first two sectors. It's now time to not crack, keep your composure and do that last sector. And it kind of compounds, doesn't it?
Well, that's what we're having a look here. Jean de Jong has gone and put Diago has gone and put a cracker time together. So he's just 0.2 off. But now you're right. What we're looking at is it's make or break at that final chicane, because you make one little mistake, outbrake yourself, exceed the track limit, and there we go. You get a penalty, or your lap time becomes invalidated. So that is such a mission, because you've gone and done all the hard work throughout the lap and that one little mistake. And I know the drivers in the real world racing situation as well, it is the one part of the track that they really do want to attack maximum. So obviously they get given a few chances with exceeding track limits. They're not going to get a penalty straight away. But the officials will say to them, you do that again and you are. But where you've got to be careful here is hitting those sausage curbs, because they generally unsettle these cars big time. Now, I don't know what is defined as exceeding track limits here, but what you want to do on that corner is actually put that sausage cone in the middle of the car, if the game allows that. So you're not actually hitting it square on with the wheel, but you're actually being able to run over it, because that is what the guys do in the GT3 cars in the race mode anyway. So it'd be interesting if Werner can comment comment on where that track limit is, if you've got him around still, it'd be nice to hear.
Maurice, absolutely spot on. So with regards to Gran Turismo, the general rule for track limits is as long as you have 2 tires on the black stuff, you'll be fine.
Cool. Happy.
That last chicane is one of the oddities, as is the corkscrew at Laguna. Seca, for instance. It does give you, as long as your outside wheels is still inside the sausage curve, you will be fine. You mustn't cut the sausage curve. So, but like you said, the perfect line through there, even in GT Sport, is to make sure that sausage curve goes straight up the middle of your car.
Okay, so great. So that's allowed, because that for me is cool. Because if anybody's gone and watched GT3 racing, Kelvin and all the guys around there, that's exactly what they're trying to achieve. But it's so tricky because slightly offline, and you connect that with a wheel, the car gets airborne, it gets unsettled, and then you are going to be off track. So you've got to be so on it. It actually reminds me a lot of the second last corner at Kyalami, which is also so difficult to nail because that curb is a monster. It's a suspension breaker, and if you do tip that, it's going to put you in the wall probably. We've seen it happen often enough, but you also want to be aggressive through that corner because there's so much time to be made.
This car right now does seem to absorb the curbs very, very nicely though. Werner, is it a setup or is it more the in-game version of this vehicle or the game itself?
Ernest, so what we do is we prohibit tuning. This whole series we will run prohibited tuning. Like we said, we want the cars to be equal for everyone, and that is why guys will play around. So although the only thing that they can play around with is the brake balance. I can promise you this car does not handle the curbs as well as it looks like on stream at the moment. So I would say that is the quality of the driver.
Okay. Wow. And speaking of quality of the driver, as we go on board with some of the guys here, we're now on board with GTS Safa. That is Kyle, currently in first position by 0.186 of a second. I realize that the lines that the front guys are taking, I mean, just look at that, are exceptionally neat. The guys are taking the car curb to curb. Marius, are you noticing that as well? These guys they're looking tight there.
Well, where I got super impressed was when Werner was telling me how many guys are running with controllers. Because I know how difficult it is to be that precise with a controller, especially when you're trying to modulate the throttle. Because you're basically rolling the toggle essentially to get it to work. It's so much easier with a steering because it's just kind of what you do when you drive your car all day, every day. So yeah, there's some proper lines. And what I love as well is knowing that there's track penalties for exceeding the limits. The guys are pushing it right to the very edge, which is what you want to do. You have a look at the brake line for turn 1 in particular. It literally is, you've got to have those wheels on the curb, on the outside curb, because you want to try and straighten that corner as much as possible. So yeah, these guys are on it, looking really, really good, and it's a cracker time.
30-minute session. We are now about 23 minutes or so in, and currently RTA Safa still in first position. Donkey in second position. The man that was tipped to certainly be near the top of the list, DMR in third, and now we go to Golf Nut Pro in fourth position. That's Yuri Engelbrecht, 2.2 seconds down. So the top 4 guys separated by about 2.26. Oh, this car does look good though. I love that livery. He's going to get noticed this season, that's for sure.
Just a comment on John. While we were talking, he's sitting in third place at the moment. He's the youngest competitor in the Pro Series from the GT Sports side. He's 16 years old.
Sure.
He joined the DMR racing team last year as one of the academy members. So DMR is Dead Men Racing. It's one of the most prominent teams on the Gran Turismo, in the Gran Turismo community in South Africa. Yeah. You'll see a number of DMR guys competing, and I think Division 2 and 3 has got most of their members. So he's definitely one of the up-and-coming youngsters and serious talent to look out for.
15 years old, and we were talking about this off air earlier on, not specifically about DMR, but at 16 years old, there's so much to learn, and we saw that with Junior learning over the off-season. I think Marius, he learned some new tricks over the off-season. He's the youngest competitor in the Pro Series, and your 16-year-old, I think what we'll see is a very fast progression. As one of the cars gets sideways there, a very fast progression of his knowledge and of his pace. I love watching that process unfold.
I think for me, especially when it comes down to the racing, because in qualifying, it's literally what the guys are doing at home. They're putting in lap after lap after lap to get themselves dialed into the track. But the one thing that I've seen that you learn when you race for real is racecraft, and getting a feel for that. And that is where the youngsters, spending time with guys like, now we've got proper racing drivers that are competing in the sim world now as well, who come with that knowledge and that experience. And that is where you've got to learn, because obviously it's going to be new for a guy like Junior who's 12 years old. You've got a 16-year-old, they don't drive, they don't have licenses, but they'll pick up the racecraft when they're getting to race now head-to-head with the best guys in the game. Van, I wanted to ask you, excuse me, we saw earlier one of the guys on a hot lap, and obviously someone backing off out of their lap, but not really doing much to get out of the way and almost impeding the driver. Is there any penalty issue for stuff like that with GT Sport?
I think we've lost Vanna.
We lost Vanna.
The penalties at the moment for this setup are limited to track limits. I spoke to Vanna before the broadcast, and the only penalties that, as far as I know from him early on, is that the guys aren't allowed to exceed track limits. The other
but you know what I mean, Ernest? It's like a little bit frustrating, because like you would love to see that where the guy goes, listen, I'm racing with my mates. I've backed off of my lap. Let me get off the racing line, because that is what you would do in the real world. Otherwise, you'd probably get given a flag and you'd have to pull in. You know what I mean? And I don't know if you noticed when we were chatting earlier, they were literally bumping doors trying to get past. He was on a hot lap, the other guy was on a slowdown lap. So it'll just be nice if that type of culture filters through to the sim community. We know we've had a lot of bitching and moaning last year when we started bringing in all of the clerk of the course and the officials and having our instant reports on Mondays, but that is how you want to treat these things, that the racing for real mentality permeates through every single thing. It's not a game.
I think a lot of the guys will be quite professional here. I think especially the faster guys, because what's been happening with the evolution of Gran Turismo is that the latest versions are very heavily based online. So the guys, they actually, when you go online on Gran Turismo, you actually have to watch a video on sim racing etiquette, before you get access to the online world. So I think the guys know that is obviously the ideal way of being. But certainly I do think we're going to see a little bit of fisticuffs happening on track every now and then.
Sorry, I did lose you for a second there, but I'm back now. So in terms of just a couple of the points that you guys have raised, we did send out a notification to all the drivers earlier, sort of as a little race briefing, just to bear in mind that the idea behind the session is an individual qualifying session, and particularly where teammates are on track together. So, like for instance, in this division will be Safa and Donkey. They can easily give each other drags and slips down the straight, but we have asked them to just maintain the sort of the unwritten rule about keeping the etiquette. That this is an individual series, so try and avoid that. Please don't abuse that.
No, but if that's an unwritten rule, then certainly it's okay then.
It is okay. Look, it will be okay. There's nothing stopping you from slipstreaming any of the other guys, but I can guarantee you that you're running in the dirty air, even in these cars in this game. It's going to compromise you, especially around a handling track like this is.
Exactly, specifically on the circuit. Yeah, specifically on the circuit, I think it might be an issue to try and perfectly line up the main straight, as you go onto those corners over there. But as someone that raced in series where there were very strict rule sets, the rules are bent and just before they break. That racers will want to win at all and any cost. So if it's not in the rule book, I don't know. I think we might maybe later on as the season gets tight, maybe see some drafting. I don't know.
Yeah, but look, I mean, also you've just got to remember, I mean, you've got 8 cars on circuit here at the moment, so it's really, really hard to get that set up. If you're sitting and running with a full 40-car GT3 field like you see in the real racing, trying to find a clean lap around Barcelona is going to be bloody difficult. So there is no need for any of these guys to get in the way of anybody on a hot lap, and that was what it was more important. For me, it wasn't for me about drafting. For me, it was more about, if you're not on a hot lap, get out of the way. You know what I mean? And that's why we saw that little incident where the 2 cars were coming together. That for me is more, there's no excuse with 8 cars on the track to impede anybody on a lap time, So
100% agree. Just look at how close these guys are in second and third position though. 0.0.
What is that? That's that's a thousandth of a second. That is like, I mean, blink and it's done. But I mean, this
not
is getting,
even blink, not even blink.
Look at how close our top three are. So things certainly are hotting up, because I don't know what our time countdown. Must be about a minute or two left in this. But this is looking like a proper qualifying run for Division 1, and it's obviously setting the benchmark for Division 2 and 3 that is coming. So the time you're going to be setting here is going to be crucial to see what the other guys can try and match in the later division runs.
Just a reminder that these times are provisional and they will be collated over the next day or two, as far as I know, but the times are provisional. We wait for all the times from all the divisions to figure out who the top drivers are. But so far, RTA Seca is right on top. We're now on board with TSM, just 1/10 of a second down so far. He's going to cross the line soon. Let's see what happens there. Any changes? No changes for him. Still in third position.
Just close. It's really close. Juan Diago really has impressed me, because he's been getting closer and closer. Safa, oh, there we go. Have a look, his time is up there into second position now. So that is.
I think it's only because. No, I think it's because Stefan. The session is over, so Stefan has probably left the track. He's gone into the pits, so I'm pretty sure we'll see the results pop up soon.
Wow.
So there was a third. Okay, yeah, because obviously tricky for us. We don't have a qualifying countdown here that we can see. So
someone spin it all around there, and we're going to spin out of this lobby for now as we go to ad breaks. We'll be right back after this. And we are back after that exciting session there. Certainly, that is one of the, I mean, that is as close as it gets, Marius. That is as close as it gets between second and third position. But the deal was sealed for first place there. RTA Safa looks like he had this one in the bag, eh?
Yeah, listen, I'd love to see the full results at the end, because I mean we kind of lost a bit of track of qualifying time. We're having such a nice chat. The 30 minutes flew by, but it was an absolute crack. I mean, a thousandth of a second is nothing between first and second place. Teammates certainly pushing each other all the way to the very end. And yeah, really cool. I mean, nice chatting with Werner as well, and getting all the insights and starting to learn who these guys are, because over the course of the next 3 or 4 months, these are the guys we're going to be commentating on the Monday nights when we go GT Sport Racing in Mercs. And it was so good to see that SLS. Very, very cool. Let's have a look at the results now. Obviously, as you heard, if you've been following the stream, the 14 fastest times will go into the first division class 1 race on the 21st of March. We've got 3 qualifying sessions, and then a couple of guys that are posting times over the course of the next 2 days. So what you're seeing is pretty much provisional, but I think that is a cracker benchmark time that's been put on. A 1:43.978 is unbelievable. And when we chatted to Werner, he said anybody doing times mid 44s are going to be super stoked. So that is a time like we saw yesterday with Jordan Sherritt, if you know what I mean. He was the only guy to go and dip below the 44s. So yeah,
exactly.
The benchmark has been set.
Even though it's only 0.2 of a second gap between him and RTA Donkey, he's still in that sort of mental zone where he's now the only one in the 43s. He's going to go to bed tonight knowing if this stays this way, as you say, it's provisional, he's going to finish this heat going, I'm the only one in the 43s. And that's a massive psychological advantage for RTA Safi's teammate, though, behind him. I'm sure they know each other's paces quite well as well. So whatever's available, whatever's left for RTA Donkey to find out or to find in time, he knows where that sits. As far as third place goes, I think he's going to be very bummed that he missed out on second by just 0.001 of a second.
Look, I can almost guarantee you, looking at these times, that Juan doesn't have anything to worry about. He will definitely be in Division 1. Those three could very well end up being the top three at the end of this whole thing.
I think so.
Those times are super close. Knowing these guys quite well as well, neither of them are what we call in the GT Sport world time trial specialists. So over one lap, they're not necessarily the best. So these guys will really come into their own when it comes to race and fuel and tire management.
That's a very exciting prospect because
Carl's 43. Carl's 43. He's one of the guys that he hates qualifying the most. Even for a race, he very seldomly starts in the front row or in the top four, but he's always on the podium. Just because his racecraft is so magnificent.
Wow. And that's an exciting prospect because then we get to see a different version of what we saw today. We've got the top three guys, but that shuffle can certainly happen. And don't forget, we've still got 2 more divisions to go. So there's still a lot more that can be inserted on here. We've got some results coming up again on the screen in a moment. Yeah, we're going to finish off with the results now. I apologize. We'll finish off with the results now. And I think we're going to be starting Division 2 pretty soon. I'm excited to see some of those names in there, Marius. We're going to get to know these guys over the coming days, over the coming season. But I think the talent is slowly starting to bubble to the surface, isn't it?
Yeah, Van, I mean, maybe you can give us some insights here because, we obviously don't know any of these guys in Division 2. You've already said that you pretty much think the 3 fastest times would have come out of Division 1. But that's exactly what the guys in Division 2 want to hear. They like the challenge. Who should we be looking out for in this one?
No, absolutely. Look, remember these divisions are completely randomized for the qualifiers. So, the numbers don't really mean that the Division 1 would be the quickest guys. In Division 2, there's a couple of guys to look out for. There's Deacon Peterson. He's also one of our controller gents. RTA DKP, look out for him. He's 17 years old, also from Cape Town. DMRE SMP3 Pro, Stefan Mock, has been fantastically fast over the last couple of months. Look out for Taylor Huey, or Ewan Taylor, DMR Taylor Huey. He is a new signing to the DMR team, along with teammate Ruan van der Walt. Those two will push each other as well. And then one of our original gangsters, Kalen Mawa, KLM Pace. He's I think 3 or 4 times SA champ, if I'm not mistaken, in the Gran Turismo world. Also hosts quite a successful streaming channel himself when he competes over, in the FI events and those sort of things. But also super quick guy to look out for.
Sure. So a lot of fast guys in the next division. And I noticed a lot of DMR guys in this division. You mentioned it earlier on, Werner, that I see about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 DMR guys. Are these guys all part of the same team, squad? Tell me more about DMR.
DMR is a team called Dead Men Racing. So it was started by Ruan van der Walt, who will race in Division 2, and Dean Orkier, who will race or qualify in Division 3 later on. They started DMR probably 18 months ago. And a very, very, very nice team in terms of what they do for sim racing in South Africa. They've got a goal aligned with what we do in GTS SA. What I think you guys probably have even at ATK, we want to advance sim racing and get noticed on the global front. So some of the guys have already been doing that in the European competition and in the Gran Turismo based FIA competitions. But they also have sort of like a young driver academy. So they go and source literally these school kids, and Juan de Jager is a perfect example of that, where they go and source these school kids and with the experience that's already in the team from guys like Ruan and Stefan and Dean, they will go and spend time and have individual training sessions with these guys, where literally they have a lobby set up where it's just the 2 of them, and they will look at the guys braking and he's braking and throttle modulation and making sure that he's not overlaying too much throttle while he's on the brakes, talk about racing lines, all those sort of things. So they do a wonderful job for sim racing in South Africa, and they've become quite a very successful team over the last year.
Well, certainly successful in numbers here today as we head into Division 2 shortly. A lot of the guys, as I said, as Marius and I've mentioned before, unfamiliar to us, but I'm sure they're going to make themselves familiar over here. The SLS Mercedes has looked to be a difficult car to drive. It has looked to be the kind of car that's kind of all over the place, which makes it also quite exciting. I like a car that's difficult to drive, Marius. I like a car that tests a driver And we know that modern race cars are in some ways easier to at least control than older race cars. So it's quite exciting for us to, over the course of this Pro Series event that Mercedes has now gotten behind, that we get to see and explore all these types of cars, and now the SLS Mercedes race car from 2011.
But dude, I absolutely loved that when I was watching a bit of the online stuff last year when there was no other racing to watch. And it was awesome if you remember what the guys were doing with DTM. I mean, they were going to all the classic DTM cars and every round was a different, and it's cool because the cars are different. They're handled differently. And you're right. I mean, so many of what we see, the cars we see today, it's very much plug and play. You know, there's so much technology involved in it that you literally are just steering the thing and not really worrying about anything else. But I love this now that Van is saying the only thing that's on is ABS. So there's no traction control, no stability control. And I can tell you that car is going to be a handful and not easy to drive. And I think, again, it's a great way to really seed your guys correctly by putting them in a car that is a little bit tricky around a track that you really do need to be in the zone, because then when we get to our first race, those guys in class 1 really are the 14 fastest drivers.
Well, I'm looking at now the list of cars that the guys will be driving, and I'd like to talk you through some of them if we have some time. Marius, we've got the A45 AMG 4MATIC 2013 model. I know you've probably driven that car at some stage. It's more of a drag racing car. It's four-wheel drive. It's very fast. It's a very fast pocket rocket hatchback, one of the fastest hatchbacks that money can buy. Effectively, this is the 2013 model as well. Started a trend with Mercedes-Benz to be very fast off the line. These guys are going to be racing these cars in round 1. It's going to be wheel-to-wheel production car type racing. I love it. I'm excited.
Yeah, we actually that A45. We actually spent a couple of laps with Lewis Hamilton at the wheel at the international launch of that car at Bilsterberg, which is like a mini Nürburgring in Germany. And I mean, I was super impressed then. And I mean, I think back then they were talking, it was like 260 kilowatts or 245 kilowatts. And we were like, wow, from a 2 liter. Yeah. Now you look at what they're producing, over 300. But yeah, it is. It's like the ultimate hot hatch at a stupid price tag. But that is what I love, is that we're seeing all levels of Mercedes-Benz performance vehicles being displayed over the next couple of rounds. So, like I said in the build-up to our first division qualifying, it's going to be cool because the guys are in different types of cars. So you get a real balanced all-round driver that at the end of the series will be the guy that can kind of drive pretty much anything.
Yeah, they're going to have to drive anything. We've got about 2 or so minutes before we start. The other cars will look like this. 300 SEL for round 3. Round 2 will be another SLS though, the AMG, but the Group 4 version. Round 4 will be the AMG Vision Gran Turismo, and that is what Werner was talking about earlier on. I think I've got a plane going past my place here, guys. Apologies for that. The AMG Vision Gran Turismo, a Formula 1 car, and another GT3 car later on. Such an exciting lineup, but what's also exciting is the fact that in the next minute or so, we're going to be jumping into Division 2. We're just waiting for these guys to make their way to the paddock area. This is that moment, the pre-race moment where you're heading to the paddock. It's moments away. It's now or never. You have to make it count. So we're just waiting for Marius to come back. I think we've lost him a little bit. We're just waiting. Speaking of waiting, as I was mentioning earlier on, anybody that's ever raced, whether online, whether in the real world, it's one of those situations that is absolutely nerve-wracking. You're waiting for the flag to drop. You're waiting for the racing to start. And you know you've only got this one chance. These guys are going to want to qualify into the top 15. And I'm, for one, am excited to see who will make the cut. And I also look forward to getting to know these guys.
Yeah, I think. Sorry, I left you hanging there.
All good. Welcome back.
I had the water boiling. Yeah, listen. It's for me. It's quite a long qualifying run. I mean, 30 minutes. I think we would have got the best out of these guys if we did. I would prefer to have seen like a 15-minute or 12-minute session, because that for me is more in keeping with what we run in real racing. I mean, there's no ways we get a 30-minute qualifying run ever, especially with so few cars in each of the divisions. So Yeah, I think the guys are kind of going lap after lap after lap after lap. And I would have preferred to see a bit more pressure being put on the guys to say, because we've heard from Werner, you exceed track limits, you get penalized 2 seconds or whatever it might be if you don't honor that and slow down and gets carried over and. So I would have liked to have seen that type of pressure. But these are comments coming from us because we've seen the progression with Assetto Corsa and the Pro Series last year, and you look at this year, the little changes that were made and learning as we go along. So I would like to see something like that start happening where you've got less time from a qualifying perspective. It puts the guys under pressure because, like you said, the countdown, the time, getting ready to go. This is why it gets intense and why a lot of these guys don't like qualifying because they don't like the pressure. They know that we've got 50 minutes in a race to get themselves in the zone. Qualifying, you don't have that. So I'd love to see things a bit tighter because I don't think you need 30 minutes to qualify. If you haven't got it right in the first 10 minutes, you're not going to.
Well, speaking of times and countdowns, we are counting down to the start of Division 2. And I agree with you, Marius. I love the pressure of qualifying. So this 30-minute qualifying session is certainly going to put a different...
livery right around the world, only the numbers change. Oh, dude, nightmare. You know, it's different, it's different if they're sitting in a Formula One car and they're running different helmets, which they are doing. But now it's very, very difficult for us to identify. You see 3 cars coming down and you're going, who the hell is that?
I think DMR have made it even more difficult for us by not having numbers on the cars.
Yeah. But luckily the game, obviously we can see which car we're focusing on. I mean, that is the joy. It makes Daniel, our director's life a little bit easier too, because we now know who we're following. But yeah, it's going to be tricky for us from a commentating perspective to pick these guys. I mean, and even you who know the guys and you race with them, it's going to be a bit of a challenge. So I'm trying to see, we are on
It's Michael Roux over there. That's Michael Roux. DMR Snaky, I think is how you say that. I think that's how the kids say it.
I'm too old for this stuff. I mean, that's like my aunt used to type messages. You know, you send text messages when you were paying for each character.
Yes.
She used to condense it. Yeah, and I could never read those. Okay, so Snaky, that is what it is.
That's the guy who's got eyes on at the moment.
Well, he snaked the corner there for sure, so that's not going to be a counted lap. But yeah, we've got another 30-minute session, one more after this. So it'll be interesting to see if anybody can dip into the 43s, that time that was set by Kyle in the first qualifying round.
1:43.974 to be exact there for Kyle, or Safa as he is known, part of the DMR squad as well, RTA squad at least. Now we're looking at some of the DMR guys, and so many of them with the same livery. So if you're getting as confused as I am at the moment, we'll figure it out over time. They head now towards the bridge section. This is SMP 3 Pro. We're on board now into the right-hander. Now it's a long right-hander. He's going to wait for it and wait to get on the power. He's going to go under the bridge yet on the downhill section, and another tight left-hander coming up over here. And again, we spoke about this early on in Division 1. The patience required on the circuit is so much. And also we were saying that although this track is not suited for racing as much as it is time attack, where it goes all the way onto that green section over there, runs real wide on the left here, the circuit certainly is, I think, suited for guys trying to go as fast as possible, duking it out in a time attack fashion, which is exactly what we have now in the 2011 Mercedes SLS GT3.
Yeah, look, I mean, most of the races we see here, if you look at Intercontinental GT Challenge and their sprint series, formerly Blancpain, you know, then the guys are doing an hour race with a pit stop and a driver change. So then it becomes a real strategy game. And that really is the only action that ends up happening. Other than that, it's pretty much follow my leader. So wise move to make this a qualifying run only, because it is going to bring the best out of the guys.
Oh, he is absolutely on it through that last section. It felt right over there. I've done a couple of laps on this course, and the way he hooked that corner up, they felt absolutely right. The guys are running the limit on these cars, 240 kilometers an hour down the main straight now, 250 just over on the brakes. 261 late braking there, 261 kilometers an hour down to third gear through the S's now. And that is SMP3 Pro in second position, down by 0.395 of a second.
What is even more impressive when you watch Stefan is that entire onboard lap we just watched was done on a controller.
Wow.
He's also one of the guys that is on a controller, and I mean the straight line braking and everything is that even the trail braking in on a controller must be so difficult.
That's nuts. That's so crazy that he's able to do that, though. And again, this is, there are going to be different schools of thought on this one. I certainly think that myself, personally, I would always want to go on a wheel, even on PlayStation, Xbox. I play with a controller because I enjoy sliding around in Gran Turismo, or at least on Forza with a controller. But when I'm doing laps, I personally prefer using the wheel. But that is the thing that makes Gran Turismo awesome, is that you've got that kind of accessibility that anybody can come. And if they've got the mind to race, you can compete as well. Looking now at
DMR guys, they are, seems like they're using each other nicely down the straights.
So as we were saying earlier on, yes, as we were saying earlier, I certainly, if it's not in the rule book and it's legal, then it's legal. Then in my mind, it's legal. And these guys, I'm not sure if they are doing it or not, but certainly if it's not in the rule book.
What I liked there, obviously a bit of a curb cut, got issued a penalty and immediately got out the way for his teammates to not impede his lap, and that is what I like to see. And hopefully that would have happened if it wasn't his teammate as well. But I mean, that is what you want to see. You know, you're off the racing line, your lap's kind of been ruined. Get out of the way, don't spoil it for someone else.
I saw a couple of guys in the chat talking about, don't spoil it to someone else. I 100% agree with that, Marius. We just got confirmation now that the qualifying on race night will be 10 minutes.
Yay.
And yeah, it will be a lot more intense. And speaking of chat, I've got a couple of guys here. Just want to do some shout outs here to the guys in the chat for joining us tonight. We've got Kyle Westhuizen in the chat there. Well, one of our drivers from earlier on. We've got Stiganator SA also in the mix there. Welcome, guys. Welcome to the Pro Series. Welcome to watching these classic Mercedes. And I mean, it's not that old, but it certainly does feel classic. And in some ways, the SLS wasn't as much of a success, a road-going version, as the current GT model. I think it might not even have been as developed as the GT model, but there certainly is something to be said for an old-school racer that's difficult to drive, and that's exactly what we see here today.
I just think that the reason that it wasn't as successful, it was just too bloody difficult for the average guy to drive. And we've seen that. I mean, you go and drive the Lamborghini Huracan. I mean, they make them so easy now. And at the end of the day, I know I'm going to be poking the bear here, but like most of the guys who have the money to buy these cars, well, don't necessarily have the ability to drive these cars. So it's important that that they make them drivable and be able to dial it to a point where there is still going to be some reward for the guy that knows what he's doing. And that was the problem with the SLS, is that it was just not very practical. If you remember, you could only pull the handle down. There was a little pull cord to get the roof down because it had the gull wings.
The gull wing doors,
classic gull wing doors. Yeah, it was difficult to get in and out of the car. That didn't help, and then it was tricky to maneuver. And I think that long nose intimidates a lot of people cruising around town, you know, because you're not sitting in a G-Wagon with raised ride height, you know. So I think people were struggling to read the curb ends and that type of stuff. But I loved it. I thought there was something quite special about it because it was hardcore.
Stefan Mock, now we're on board with him in this hardcore car, and he's got no issues handling this, as you say, hardcore car through the tight left-hander there. DMR SMP3 Pro. 200 kilometers an hour into the hard braking zone, down into third gear. As we mentioned earlier, these guys love riding the curve. They've got no issue running this car on the curve. They've got it so set up. And that, speaking of setup, they're not allowed to change the setup. And Banner was saying earlier on that it's actually not, you know, I'm referring to the setup, but it feels like, Banner was saying that these guys are actually driving this car that well. We've got some of the best GT competitors here today, and that seems to be the case. The guys that are doing well over these curves are doing well because they are good at getting those cars over.
I can tell you what, I'm watching this now, and I've got a bit of work that I've got to do a little bit later. I'm thinking maybe I need to fire up my PlayStation and get my Gran Turismo. I don't even know. I think I've still got Gran Turismo 5. I'm that far behind. So I think what are they busy developing? 7 at the moment.
That is correct. 7's coming out, and lots of changes happening with that one. Still a lot of speculation, of course, but I think the community is hoping that they keep this online element. This Gran Turismo at the moment is very much about that online element, as SMP3 Pro cements his second place there, 0.2 of a second behind Taylor over there in first place.
What is the lap time though, Ernest? I'd love to see, because I mean that's what's also difficult with us. We're so used to in the Seca Corsa format, you know, we're getting the actual lap time, so we know. Daniel's putting us through to the monitor now. So okay, he's doing a 44.1. Okay, so that's not far off, eh? So
0.2 of a second off, yeah, 0.2 of a second off.
I think that does that not put him in second overall?
I think it might. I think it might put him in second overall. We're going to have to wait and see, but there's going to be a battle for the top 3 guys by the looks of it. We were wondering if that was going to be the case, if anybody's going to be able to get anywhere close to either the low 44s or the high 43s. Certainly, we've got 2 guys now in the low 44s, so definitely a shuffle starting to happen, and it's not even Division 3 yet.
That's quite interesting, as Werner was saying. I mean, these guys were all randomly put into division, so it's definitely not seeded in any way, but it's running very similarly to what we saw in the first one, where there were like 3 guys that really were clearly the guys to watch, and then the other guys were kind of 3 or 4 seconds off the pace. But that is what I love, because in the format, obviously we're going to be broadcasting live the stream in all of the races of the pro division, which will be the 14 fastest guys. Yes. But as Werner was explaining to us, you know, the 3 slowest guys from each round will get relegated, and the 3 fastest in the division below will get ramped up in the way they also put the points together. You know, it's not all done and dusted after race 1, and that is crucial to keep guys in it, to keep guys hungry. But it's also, you're going to see a massive improvement. These sort of guys that are running 5-4 seconds off the pace, watch them come middle of the year, July, just racing like this in a series that is this professional with the guys that are this quick. It just raises the game for everyone.
I love that about a series though, because you've now got a situation where, let's say someone is very good in a GT3 car, in a front wheel drive, in a 4-wheel drive, in a rear wheel drive. You know, you've got those type of specialists at play. And what if you've got someone now that's not good in a road car or in a 4-wheel drive, road car specifically, in the next round? You're going to have all of those variables, you're going to have all of those possibilities. And again, as you say, with it being a one-make series, you're going to have the talent bubbling. Now, mid-season, you mentioned earlier, things can change up. And again, another benefit of having a season is that middle of the season, suddenly some of the talent starts getting a lot faster. The younger guys start learning new tricks. And it's going to be an exciting season as things progress and as things change, as we now go on board with the 10th position man, V8 Jag, 2.5 seconds down from the top.
One of our viewers mentioning in the chat that he noticed while we were on board with Stefan with SMP3 Pro that he's done 1,046 kilometers in this SLS, and like Sean mentions on the chat here, that's probably guaranteed only around this track to practice for this specific event, because you're not easily going to use this in any of the other, you know, FIA type races on Gran Turismo Sport. So
how much time does he have?
Yeah, does he work? Is he
no, he's I believe he's sort of our age, I would say, probably
25,
high 30s, low 40s. No, come on, Marius, let's be honest. Yeah.
No, I was going to say, I got excited when you said our age. I'm like, dude, I'm 46. There's no ways I'm batting.
For once, I might be the youngest in the room. For once.
Yeah, I think you are. But for me, I know I'm going to sound, I'm giving away my age when I start raving about Gran Turismo, because, you know, when I start thinking about it, like a lot of what we see now in the online racing community was established by Gran Turismo. That's my honest opinion. And you look at, I mean, you spoke, yes, about like our own Ashley Oldfield, but I mean, you go back to Luca Ordonez, you know, we met him at Le Mans, and to take, they were the guys that started this from game to real, you know, and converting guys that were fast in the sim world and converting them to real racing drivers, guys that have gone on to have successful, genuine careers. You know, now you sit in a format where it's got to the point where this is the career for some guys. Yeah. You know, they don't want to worry about going and racing real cars because this is their job. So it's amazing how many people, I think everybody at some point has played Gran Turismo. And that for me is what is so cool, is that it's nice for us to be showcasing this as well. And I love the fact, I mean, I remember spending hours and hours getting the licenses done, you know, and there you are required to flip and drive anything and everything. And so many guys that get into new cars today, their first car is way too fast for them. They haven't cut their teeth in a Honda Civic, which is where we all flipping started in Gran Turismo, entering along in that, and then building that up. So for me, I love that, because the whole thing was set up about making you a better driver. That was the game. That was the goal. Those licenses weren't just, okay, well, scrap it, let's go and race arcade mode. And that for me is crucial, because you are teaching and upskilling people in that way. Now when you get to a series like this, we've got the pros racing, again, we can now take them further. You've got to this level, let's make you better as a racing driver, and that you're only going to learn by going head to head in a series like this. So I think we're in for an exciting time. I'm loving the fact that we're getting to do a bit of both. We know the Assetto Corsa format now. This I love, single manufacturer racing. That's great.
On board with Deegan here. This is Deegan Peterson into third position, 0.3 of a second down. On what you were talking about there, Marius, man, I'd like for you to comment on this. What percentage of these guys here want to stay in the sim world, want to go to the racing world, want to do both, want to cross that bridge? What is the sentiment in the Gran Turismo world? Marius and I were discussing this yesterday, and I'd like to know from your point of view what your thoughts are on that topic in this space.
Ernest, I think there's the problem we sit with at the moment, and that's something that we as a community has been trying to work towards, is to actually get recognition from the FIA for sim racing in the Gran Turismo world. Gran Turismo hosts an annual their World Series events where the top drivers from each region gets to go and compete in a international stage. Guys like Mikhail Zal, who's multiple champion on that front. And we've got guys that are as quick and can compete with those level of drivers. But South Africa, for some reason, in the Gran Turismo world, has not been recognized. They call their region, Africa, Middle East, and Europe, EMEA, Europe, Middle East, and Africa, and yet our guys have not been getting the recognition. So I would say probably, there's probably 20 or 30 guys in the Gran Turismo world at the moment that really want the recognition on a global stage. A lot of the youngsters have got big ambitions. I know guys like Diki really enjoys his sim racing.
Well, Diki's just been bumped down to fourth. Sorry to stop you there, Vanna. Diki's just been bumped down to fourth, and Kalen now has slotted into third position, down 2/10. Obviously,
so a lovely livery on that Pace Motorsport Merc.
Ooh, looks great, eh? Oof, that half and half. Oh, I love that. It's also nice to not see a yellow car on the track. Look at the font, the font on this car as well. Even the word Pace just looks cool. It's a very cool looking car, I must say. Sure.
No, but Vanna, it's difficult though, because I think a lot of guys are starting to have a bit of a reality check. I mean, we all want to go racing, and the sad truth is, like, racing is for rich men. It's like that is the problem. And no matter where you start, like we were speaking about it last year, karting was okay. Well, hey, we've got to go karting. Karting's got ridiculous, because if you're not changing an engine every bloody round, or you're not running the latest tires, and what the cost is, it's actually killing the sport. So you want to see them regulating that. But that is where sim racing becomes a real viable option for people, because there is costs. I mean, you can go crazy in terms of what you get yourself out with. But the general guy can go, like you said now, with controllers and be doing laps. There's no ways you're going to do lap after lap 1,000 kilometers in SLS where in what lifetime ever, unless you've got a hell of a lot of money. You don't have a repair bill. You don't have any of that type of stuff. So I think more and more guys are realizing, hey, that is pipe dream. We'd all love to do it, but let's do this, because we can actually make a name for ourselves. Maybe we can make a bit of a living from it, because that is where sim racing has got to now, is that it's got the best kickstart it could have had, and it can thank COVID for that, because it just put it front and center stage in everyone's mind. So I just like the legitimizing of it, and I think the fact that you guys are on board with us now, Motorsport South Africa is involved in it as well. You're now starting to get the recognition that you guys are looking for. So maybe this is the sort of pressure that the FIA needs in terms of how GT sport is looked at from an African perspective. Because I think we just kind of get lost in the clatter that is the Middle East and Europe.
Well, the story
Absolutely.
of Ashley Oldfield as well is similar in that vein, that He was a works driver for Nissan when he went over for the Gran Turismo program. And because of the ties with Nissan Europe and the non-ties with Nissan South Africa, you know, his drive eventually fell away, and it's that disconnect. But we've always had that problem here at the tip of Africa, isn't it? That's why we develop our own race cars. That's why we develop our own special editions, because there's that disconnect between us and the rest of the world. And I hope that they can mend that now.
But you know what the problem is? It's like, yeah, we've developed our own race cars, but I mean, if you go back to days like when my cousin was racing touring cars, that is what made it so good, is that what we were racing here is what they were racing in Europe. So John Cleland would come and race here, my cousin would go and race British touring cars.
I saw that car. I saw that car today on a website. That exact silver car was at a heritage event in Europe somewhere. Beautiful.
Yeah, no, those cars are floating around, but that was what was cool. But it obviously became too costly again, and that is really what killed things for Ashley. Yes, it would have been great. What you mean, I know, by Nissan South Africa's tires, it comes down to financial support.
Yes.
And those guys, if you want to race with us, there is a checkbook. You've got to pay, and that is unfortunately always going to be the case when you're sitting with a rand dollar or euro rand exchange that is just going to hammer you wherever you go.
Yes,
it's really difficult for it to become a career. And you know, you chat to guys, Kelvin, Sheldon, Jordan, Tasman, all of them. I mean, they were all like at 15 when I chatted to Kelvin. He was like, dude, I don't want to race Formula One because it's not even a reality. He knew that at that age. So for him, it was going tin top racing was the way in. But the pressure that they were under, because literally there was a limited budget. If they didn't make it happen in those 2 or 3 races, done. There's no more money, son. You know, you've got to nail it and you've got to be noticed. So massive pressure, but they've got and done it. And what they've done is opened the way for other people that aspire to race internationally. But you've got to have a checkbook. You've got to get yourself noticed. You've got to have the talent. Of course you do. But it's very difficult. I think they have made it a bit easier because people are now noticing South African drivers. We've always had incredible talent. You name it, rally, wherever you go. Our drivers are the real deal.
These guys are racing over here. Speaking of the real deal, Marius, these guys are legit racing over here. Didn't anybody send them the memo?
No, they missed it.
At least we got some excitement on track here as well. Even down in 11th position with Cabos over there in 11th position. Even down there, that's Cobestrado creating overtaking opportunity here into the first corner. 777 car cuts it down the inside, but still maintains position in front. Cabos has to slot in behind him, and through the S's they go now.
Welcome to the red mist. That helmet came down and it was like, hey, we racing, you dive me, I'm going to get past you. And all he needs to do is pull over, let the guys disappear, because he's actually not going to set a lap time. Van was talking about it earlier. Doing this, being involved in a dogfight, all you're doing is I know he's got tire wear turned off, but it's not going to help. It's not going to help you set a lap time. I want a clear track in front of me, where in the distance I can see a guy that's quicker than me, and I want to chase him down. That's what I want. But you can see what happens. Like guys start doing silly things, spinning.
That driver just spun out as well. Yeah. One of the DMR guys coming through in one of the yellow cars there. That's Kevster down in 14th position now. 6 seconds separating the guys. 14th
that's
position.
Kevin Boyd, I think I picked up on. Yeah, so that's a massive difference in time. And I mean, I suppose it's something that we're not really used to, Ernest. You know, what we've been seeing in the last season, running the ATK Pro Series in Seca Corsa, you know, the guys are on it. They're a lot closer in that spread, but we mentioned this a few times. You're going to see those gaps closing. Yeah, we're going to see that becoming a lot closer as the season starts.
Definitely, we'll certainly see that, and we're covering the fastest guys as well. I mean, this is a huge grid of cars. We've got, I think, just under 50 entrants for this series over here, and I mean, that's a lot of guys. That's a big spread. And I looked through some of the bios. You've got everybody from hobbyists who absolutely do this for fun on their couches to guys that take it a lot more seriously. So you've got that widespread. These guys are going to be running in the championship still, but we'll be covering the main event, so to speak, and that's what the guys are trying to seed themselves for here, is that main event, is that main party, is that top spot. As DMR SB Pro goes fastest here with 0.1 seconds in the bag there. The DMR guys still in the top 2, Taylor in second position there, and that stunning pace car in third.
I just noticed, also mentioned on the chat by some guys, that Kevster is actually running the wrong Merc. He's running the updated AMG GT3. So his time, hopefully, I'm sure Josh will let him know in the in-game chat.
Can we
so
get
he
a
can
look
jump
at
into the
Kevster's
correct car.
Can we get a look at Kevster's car? I want to see what that looks like. Oh,
There he is.
Kevster! Come on, Kevster! What are you doing, bro? Did he
So
think no one was going to
that time of
notice?
his won't count in any event.
Well, it's not counting anyway. He's 6 seconds off the pace in the new spec car, so it didn't even help him, you know. It's like
Did Kevster think he was going to sneak under the radar with that car? Don't worry, guys. It's exactly the same as yours. That car looks very badass now, and you can see that car's got, the pace car gets sideways there. You can see the development and how far the development of the Mercedes has come over the years. It's really quite cool to then look at the cars back to back, look at the pace example over here, which in my mind is one of the more stunning ones on track, and then going to Kevster's new spec one over there. It's really interesting how far these cars have come over the years.
But I mentioned earlier that I thought this was going to be a kind of a real spread out qualifying session. And yeah, it is. We've got 6 seconds off the pace, but it looks like it's quite nicely bunched up. The top four, I think, are all within like 0.2 or 0.3 of each other, which is really, really nice. So hopefully Mr. Boyd is going to get into the correct car and still be able to go out and set a lap time that's going to see him seed himself somewhere, because we are going racing on the 21st, and he's not going to be racing in that car on the 21st either. It's going to be an A45 then, so best he has a look at his schedule.
Pace Motorsport now in third position, 0.2 seconds down, and as you say, these guys are all, hopefully, I think the Pace guys have secured their spot to race on the 21st so far in those AMG A45s. We've got about 4 minutes of qualifying or so left so far. We're now on board with iCarbon ZA. That name does look familiar, I'm not going to lie. I think I've seen him in the online communities. That's Charles over there, Charles Schneur. If I'm saying
he's very active on the ACC side as well, so you might have come across him on, playing ACC lobbies.
Yes.
Also one of our more experienced racers. Nothing to do with his age, just the length that he has been racing with us. He's also been with us since the beginning.
Yeah, he's very smooth by the looks of things. So far, 1 second down, but he's really threading that car around the circuit in quite a sort of. It looks like there's a method to the madness. There's a rhythm to what he's doing, I think. So it does look like he's done a couple of laps, turned a few laps in his day there, man. That's for sure.
Absolutely, and I see the top 7 years only separated by a second, so it's a much closer division than Division 1.
Yes. Gets it sideways there and gets a penalty to boot. Has to now slow it down all the way on the worst part of the track. He's got to slow it down. He's going to now hold back and then get going on the straight. That next lap is ruined now. Might
as well just go. I think he's just done that. Might as well just go back to the pits.
Exactly.
And just come out again, because you're compromised completely if you don't get an exit out of that last corner.
Yeah, you see, it's so tricky, because I mean his car got unsettled big time, obviously hitting the curb, and he obviously exceeded track limits. So, you're kind of dealing with a car that doesn't want to do what you want it to do. Plus, you've now got a penalty, and you're trying to get a run onto the very long straight here. So, yeah, I did a good thing by going back to the pits. You're right, because I mean all he is going to be doing now is going out on another sighting lap and building up for another flyer. But yeah, it's actually been quite a lack of qualifying session, this, because it's been really, really close. We saw there are guys that are way down on pace, obviously, but a nice little battle up top, and it's going to be quite interesting in the mix to see how Division 1 and Division 2 pan out. I know these times will all be provisional, because there's still some guys that need to post times tomorrow and the day after. But yeah, this has been a lot closer than I thought. We all thought, geez, somebody's made it into the high 43s. But here we go in Division 2, and I think they're like 0.2 off of that. So yeah, really, really close at the top.
The times certainly have been close. We saw in Division 1 there was 1,000th of a second gap between second and third place, and now we got two tenths of a second separating the top 3 guys. That's really competitive stuff. And what does that say about the racing, Van? Does that translate onto the track as well? As we now look at the times of 44.0, that is less than a tenth of a second. That's 0.25 seconds. Yeah, 0.025 seconds off the fastest time set by Kyle earlier on. Then a tenth of a second further back, you've got Tiki. You've got another 2/100ths of a second back. this is so close, so very, very close. Werner, does this translate to the racing itself?
It absolutely does. Also, obviously dependent on the car. So luckily, I think all the cars that we have chosen in the first race is going to be extremely tight. The road cars, they don't know what dirty air means. So it'll literally be bumper to bumper like the old sad car touring cars back in the day. It's going to be and these guys are all very similarly paced.
Yeah.
So, the race is obviously, there'll be a 10-minute qualifying session, but wherever you start on that grid, you're never out the race. One thing about Gran Turismo is the slipstream in the game is probably overly strong when you compare it to real life. So as long as you're within 3/4 of a second of the guy in front of you, you are never out of it.
You know what I found? I mean, I'm just doing maths, this isn't my strong suit, but just doing a calculation here. And I'm thinking we've basically, between Division 1 and Division 2, we've got 8 guys that I think that are all within 0.5 of each other if you put the 2 times together. So we've got 14 guys going through to that first Class 1 in our first race, and we've already got 8 guys that close. So I think it's going to be, sure, man, we're going to have a proper strong grid when we get to our first round on the 21st.
Yeah, definitely a strong grid. I think this is, if the racing is as close as the qualifying, it's going to be one of the situations where it's anybody's game, which is always exciting to watch. It means that somebody can make a mistake that we think is going to win and then not even feature. You've got all these variables when you have one-make racing, when you've got close racing, and those are the variables we get to look forward to now as we complete this session. We're now on board with SMP Pro in first place by 0.1 of a second. DKP just behind him in second place. Taylor in third. Oh my goodness me, what an intense qualifying session. What an intense seeding session. Seeding is now done, folks. We're going to go to a break, and we'll be back after this with Division 3. We are going straight into results there, and there you have it. SMP Pro in first position. That's Stefan Mock in first position, but there was not much in it. A 10th of a second or so to second place man DKP, and third place right in there with him. This is going to be an insanely close battle. And as Werner was saying earlier on, Marius, the guys might not necessarily even be good at qualifying. So we could look at someone like DMR Snakey there down in 6th position that's just biding his time, rubbing his hands together, going, I'll deal with you guys on race day.
Yeah, but I think it's not going to be that easy because they're in such different cars, like from race to race. And, when they do go and get into the AMG, the A45, it's like, but it literally is going to be like Werner said. Think of the old standing Group N racing days. That's what it's going to be like. And there, one little mistake, you're not going to lose 1 place, you're going to lose 7. So that for me, I don't think you want to come into this saying, I'm not a good qualifier, but I'm bloody good at race pace. Yeah, I suppose the consistency comes into it. But yeah, I'm just happy that we saw such a close qualifying run now. And I'm starting to, like I said, do the math and looking at the times of our combined top 8 at this stage with one more seeding run to go. It's going to be a strong grid for the first round.
So I'm going to assume here, or at least I'm going to admit here, that I don't exactly know who's who in the zoo here. So I'm going to defer to you on this one, Werner. Could you run us starting from number 5 up to number 1? Could you give us a quick synopsis on our 5th place up till first place drivers, please?
Sure. So 5th place is Ruan. Ruan is, like I mentioned earlier, one of the co-founders of DMRE. Also, he basically runs the DMRE Academy side. Kalen KLM Pace, the OG, you'll notice his Pace Motorsport teammates being very vocal in the chat.
He's
They're
the
already
guy with
talking
the
about.
good-looking car. He's the guy with
That's
the good-looking
correct. They're already talking about delivery for the A45 for race one.
I'm excited. I'm excited.
Taylor Huey, I must admit as well, I don't know too much about him. He's a new signing to DMR, new to our community, but come very highly sort of regarded, and also does real life racing, I believe. I'm not entirely, I wanted to still find out exactly what he races in real life, but I'm not entirely sure. DKP, that's the 17-year-old Cape Townian, who's in, I think he's in matric this year.
If he's 17-year-old, has he improved a lot over the last couple, let's say 12 months?
DK has been quick from the start, but he's definitely picked up his pace. He was prominent in, if you guys follow Gran Turismo streamers, he races in similar lobbies to guys like Key 25 and Tichney and those guys, and he competes against those guys who are the top of the top when it comes to GT Sport. And also he's on controller. The top two guys actually are both on controller. And then Stefan Mock,
amazing.
Got his age, Marius, it was mentioned in the chat. He's 50 years old, so he's one of the old-timers.
I love it.
And he absolutely enjoys his sim racing.
Yeah, that's what I love about it. I mean, because I know I'm never going to grow up, so I'm going to be that 70-year-old. I don't know what gaming is going to look like at that stage, but I've probably pimped up my wheelchair and it'll be flipping flying around. But that is what is so lucky. Yeah, we've got flipping guys in matric racing against 50-year-olds. I mean, it's, I love it. You don't get to do that anywhere else. You really don't.
Welcome to the world, the wonderful world of sim racing. This today is brought to you, of course, by Mercedes-Benz South Africa. We've got Motorsport South Africa involved. We've got ATK involved. And then, of course, we've got the Kyalami 9-hour involved as well. It's incredible. We're mentioning those names, Marius. You commentate on the real world racing. So do I, but you commentate on the big stage with the Kyalami 9-hour. But when we work on this deck, it really does feel like, just based on the list of names that I just mentioned, this is the real deal, isn't it?
Well, that for me was what was so cool, because we got to meet a lot of the guys that came to the Kyalami 9-hour race last year, guys that we were commentating on in the virtual world, and getting to finally put faces to the names was cool. But to see their real genuine passion for motor racing, whether it's in the virtual world and the real world, it's good to go. But if you want to be taken seriously and to be considered as a pro at what you're doing, then you need to have brands like this partnering with you. And I think that is what ATK has done so well. Last year was totally new for me, and we had a long season, 12 rounds, and blown away by the quality of the driving that we saw, how competitive it was, the fact the guys were being dealt with like real racing drivers, with rules, penalties. We were having our incident reports every Monday. Everything about it smacked of real. And I joked the first time I watched it, I had mates walk past and say like, "Oh, what racing are you watching?" Because it looks that real on your bloody big screen, So that for me is really cool. And to have Motorsport
they
South
hear your
Africa,
voice. They hear your voice, Marius, and they think that the 9-hour. I think that's it.
Yeah, maybe, but it's just super cool to have Motorsport South Africa involved, validating something like this. And we heard what Werner was saying, like the guys kind of like, hey, we need the help. We want that step. We want that platform to take what we're doing to the next level. And I think joining up with ATK this year for 2021, powered by Mercedes-Benz, this is awesome. And I think, Werner, what you guys have done as a showcase for Mercedes-Benz is also massive value for them, because it's living the brand. It's bums in seats in a virtual way. And I think that's brilliant, where obviously with a set of course, the guys can choose the cars they want to drive. This for me is a real nice showcase for them. So welcome to the game, and thanks for bringing some really good competitive racing or qualifying.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a no-brainer for us the moment we heard that Mercedes-Benz was on board to already decide the cars will all be in the Merc stable. What is nice is Merc is also one of the main sponsors of Gran Turismo, and I mean, I think even Lewis Hamilton has Gran Turismo on his race caps after each race. He's also a brand ambassador, so Merc is well represented in Gran Turismo. in terms of the variety of cars. I think there's literally 20 or 30 cars we could have chosen from. One of the cars that sadly missed out when we put it all together is the classic Group C Le Mans car, the Sauber C9. We could have had a Group 1 race around Le Mans, but I think the 40-minute race distance would have been a bit too short for that kind of a race. You actually need 90 minutes to 2 hours to really enjoy that one.
But that's if I remember correctly, I think you get 370, 360, 370 down the Mulsanne straight in that, if I remember correctly, because we've driven that car in Gran Turismo. It's unbelievable. I mean, things happen fast.
That's correct, yeah. Some of our favorite events to have is, these ad hoc endurance races we'll host, where it'll be Group C cars only, and you see the old Mazda 787B and the Sauber C9 and the Nissan R89. The Jaguar XJR9, those kind of cars. The Soul Cut Jaguar, purple.
Man. Those cars are
running down
some of my favorite. Those cars are some of my favorite cars. Some of the most iconic cars ever made. And to see them on circuit like that, and that's the thing. That's what we're going to get to see now going over the next couple of events. We've also got guys like Kev that's going to just rock up with a different car and provide us even more variety. So it's great. And you were saying, what other Mercs were you looking at, and why did you choose the Mercedes-Benz that you've chosen for this season?
So what we wanted to do is we wanted a variety of the various different classes. So Gran Turismo, the racing classes are spread between the GT3s, the GT4s. Then there's a GT2 class, which is basically your Japanese touring car series. Which is similar to the DTM, whatever. The name has now slipped my mind exactly what they called in Japan. Jenson Button raced in the Honda a couple of years ago.
Super GT.
Super GT, that's it. Yeah. And then you have your GT1 class, which is pretty much your Le Mans prototype class.
Yes.
So what we wanted to do is spread across the biggest variety. We wanted to do a road car, and we chose, the A45 for that because of its four-wheel drive. The guys will be doing that race on road tires, normal.
Good.
It won't be racing tires, so it's going to be the car's going to be sliding all over the place. Four-wheel drifts happening, but they must be careful of that because even though it's quicker, the tire wear will be quite high. So it's going to be a tire and fuel race as well. And then in the Group X class, we wanted to showcase the Vision Gran Turismo, which we spoke about briefly earlier, where the engineers get given free reign. So we wanted to showcase one of the Vision Gran Turismo cars. And then obviously the iconic Merc Formula One car has been so dominant over the last number of years. We wanted to really bring that one in as well.
Sure. Wow, what a way to come to that conclusion. I'm looking through the comments here. You've certainly got a bunch of guys that are happy. Marius, we've even got a shout out here. Werner also got a shout out from Kyle Oosthuizen, and he says it's kind of surreal having your name called out on a stage like this. Thanks to all the organizers, and goes on to mention the guys involved with this. I mean, it must be cool to be racing and be able to access the video of your races. If you're racing on a local stage, Marius, you'll know you don't get the production value.
Oh, you're gonna have to excuse me. I've got my dogs that have decided to add to the chorus line. So
so you can say hi to your dogs, Marius. So it's nice to be able to, let's say you go to a regional event, Werner, and it's a good event. It's well packaged, good production, but nobody watches that event. It's not a broadcast oftentimes. But when it comes to this ATK Pro Series, as we heard Kyle Oosthuizen say now, you get your name, you get a shout out. We got Gerrit van Vieren also here talking about the pace car. The guys get to be heroes, they get to be villains, they get to be spoken about, they get to create controversy, they get to start and create storylines for themselves, their brands and their sponsors. Just like we are doing the same for Mercedes-Benz. It's fantastic.
Absolutely. And I mean, it's not something that you will experience anywhere else in your normal day-to-day life. No one is going to stand in your job and advertise you on a YouTube stream talking about how well you've done. So I think, that kind of recognition for the hard work that these guys are putting in and the hours of practice. I promise you there's some of these guys that spend hours and hours and hours of practice. Yeah. And I even hope that the wives and girlfriends and partners are watching the stream as well and seeing that, all of the hard work does pay off in the end.
Yeah, exactly.
We
And
could do a
someone joking-
girlfriend's race.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that, Marius.
That
We
might
actually
be a
have a
good
lady
idea.
competing. We actually have a lady competing in the next division.
I saw.
Margot Brooks. We're running a ladies Gran Turismo league. We tried to convince the two ladies that's currently leading in that event to join us, but a lot of times they don't have their own PlayStations, and hubby will take preference, which is unfortunate. But the ladies league has really expanded as well, and we're looking forward to growing that as well.
Listen, I'm glad you brought that up because, you know, there's no excuse, you know. In this format, male, female, it's all even, you know, let's go. The only challenge is just making sure you get it's like who gets the remote first, who gets the PlayStation first. But I think it's really cool that you've gone and created a series like that, because we actually had it last year with Morgan and Junior McCall, where they were sharing a wheel, so they could never race in the same races together. You know, so maybe there'll be a shout out, and maybe that's a nice incentive for people to get involved there from a sponsorship perspective in terms of making consoles available. That's what is nice. I mean, yesterday, for the first time, I went to the ATK arena, where that is what is so cool, because if you don't have the equipment, you can still be competing, because you can just go and, you know, rent your time, and there you go, good to go.
Yeah.
All the equipment is there. So that is really cool, and that's something down the line that I guess PlayStation could look at setting up. Be great.
Yeah. ATK certainly paving the way, and we're going to pave the way one more time tonight for Division 3 as we head into the only division that features a lady racer. Of course, I'm talking about Margot Brooks, that we're going to be seeing driving here in Division 3 as we head to the track shortly. Yeah, man, Marius, I tell you what, that ATK setup over there, it messes with your mind the first time you get there, because it was not what I was expecting either.
Okay, so I mean, now I had my three dogs in chorus, so that's when you kind of know that you're not doing commentary for real. We're not sitting in our soundproof studios.
Yes,
but
indeed.
yesterday I kind
We
of
are
felt,
in the comfort of our homes.
exactly. Yesterday I felt like I was like race face on, you know, because the setup there is so jacked and so professional that I kind of had a bit of tunnel vision going, and you get into the zone. It really is quite something, and I suppose that is what is lacking from a Gran Turismo perspective, is having arenas or a platform like that, a place where you can go and the consoles are just accessible. There was a time when I know we were pushing quite hard doing work with Sony in South Africa. You used to be able to go to shopping centers, and there were always consoles and accessibility for people to go and play the games. And I think that's what we want to start seeing, you know, and it might be something taking this further to do qualifying rounds at shopping centers as a gateway into racing and GT sport as well. So there's a lot of opportunities down the line to expand on. But we're looking forward to another 30 minutes. Obviously, we want to try and find our 14 fastest guys so they can gear up for the first round on the 21st. Anybody to look out for you, Werner?
So on screen currently is Cornelis Toizen. He's one of the guys that's one of the more consistent performers, generally top 10, top 5 performer in every season that we've run. DMR Dino is probably the guy to look out for here, who's extremely quick. He's captaining the DMR team. I'm not sure what he's doing on the side of the road currently. He's probably just waiting for some clean air. And then on screen now, Sir Ian, he's also on controller. He is a new signing to the RTA team, but also has shown tremendous talent and pace. Serious Sam ZA is currently leading our Super Formula season, and I think he's got that season in the bag with one race to go. There's some really quick guys here. Just to mention also to Steel 27. He is one of the guys that really takes his hobby seriously. He also runs the PC side of things. I think he's the only guy that's actually entered for the ACC on PC and GT Sport for the Pro Series. He currently runs one of the Fanatec DD1 podium wheels, I believe. Managed to get one into South Africa for around 60,000 Rand, so that's probably the upper end of the scale in terms of wheels.
Wow.
We'll see how well that helps him out tonight.
Yeah, he better be fast then. He's getting that kind of money on the wheel.
But that is, but that is honestly, that is what I do really love. Because I mean, the guys with AC, with the Seca Corsa, were just kind of saying, like, just chatting to them last year, if you don't have a proper feel from the pedal box that you're using. You don't have the right wheel. It's hard to be that quick. And I mentioned the story earlier with Formula One racing driver who did so well on keyboard. But in Gran Turismo mode, it's doable. You know, the guys that are at the top of the list here are just playing on controller, and it's actually incredible because you wouldn't even know. You know, you're not seeing a car that's snaking all over the place. These cars look like they're being driven by a wheel, you know, so it really is quite incredible.
Jordan Shedder was just commenting in the comment section. Oh, somebody spins out there. That last year he was on the G27 and was still very competitive. That was Yastil, we were just talking about that spun out now. He was competitive on even a G27, and look, he is very, very quick. But certainly, Gran Turismo does allow for either an entry-level steering wheel or a decent steering wheel, and then, as you say, Marius, the controller. So the talent pool, I think it's deep. The guys that make it to that top 14, top 15, I'm excited to see how they compete against each other because I think it's going to be close.
But you know what I want to do? So here's an idea. When we get to our season finale, it'd be super cool to take like the top 10 in Seca Corsa, the top 10 in Gran Turismo, and you basically do a swap out. So we're going to all race ACC for one race, and then we're going to race Gran Turismo for another, and it's controllers only. And then everyone else is going to be on G27 wheels for Seca Corsa. That for me would be really cool because like we've almost leveled the playing field here by them all running the same car, no heavy modifications, etc., etc. If everybody was running the same equipment, that would also be a real interesting one. It'd be fun to do that at the end of the year, just to see how our Seca Corsa guys with wheels would do, trying to do Gran Turismo with a controller. It'd be very interesting.
I think it's not a bad idea for the ATK showdown, you know, at the end of July. In Cape Town. Hopefully, you know, some of our admin team can make our way down there as well. It'd be fantastic to be part of the live event there. Just looking at the times now, Dino already putting up a 44.4, and I think if that was his first flying lap, I'm sure you'll go you'll go even quicker than that.
44.8 at the moment. Yeah, it's only two guys in the 44s. If you remember back last, I think we had about 6 guys that were sitting in the 44. So it's still early. I mean, we probably want.
Yeah, they've just done
6 minutes in. Yeah, 6 minutes in. So a lot can still happen and will happen.
A lot can certainly happen. 4/10 of a second separating the top two. Another DMR car on the top spot, but now currently we're looking at the gentleman they call RTR Leap. That is Corne Esterhuizen in second position. Corne Esterhuizen in second position, 4/10 of a second down in the number 33 car over there. And another good-looking livery. It's I think. Console games, Werner, you can correct me if I'm wrong, the console games place a higher sort of emphasis on livery. Now, nothing wrong with the DMR Jazz car over here, but we've spoken about the fact that we've seen that livery a bunch of times. But the game does put a lot more emphasis on livery, unlike the PC games, if I'm not mistaken, as Serious Sam goes into fourth. Jazz takes second. A lot of shuffling happening at the moment. So just to change that train of thought before we go back to that, a lot of shuffling happening at the moment. Dino in first position by a full second, and Jazz in second position.
I think if we look at Dino's time, he's probably well into the 39s.
Yeah, let's have a look and see if we can get those times up, producer. We got Dan on. Oh my goodness,
43.8.
43.8
overall so far.
43.8 for Dino over there. Overall fastest. We did not see that coming. The third session, providing the start of the third session, only 7 minutes in, and already we've got ourselves a new fastest player here, Dino.
Yeah, I looked at that, I thought, how is there a second gap? Because that's not possible unless somebody went really fast. So that's a cracker time, eh? 0.1 quicker than what we saw in that Division 1 first round qualifying session. So yeah, this race 1 grid is starting to look really sweet. There's some proper talented drivers and a nice mix-up, like we said. Some guys using controllers, some guys using wheels. So yeah, it really is a good matchup.
I think a lot of guys.
Dino runs the Thrustmaster T300 wheel set, and he's one of the guys. Also, 18 months ago, he hadn't even touched a PlayStation or a wheel. He's been tremendously quick over the last year and improving monthly, weekly, daily. He puts in a lot of time. probably spends, if I had to guess a rough estimate, probably 5 to 6 hours a day on his sim racing. So he's really reaping the rewards, and he's quickly becoming one of the top contenders in Europe as well.
Wow. But you know what, Vanna, that's the lesson to everybody out there. And I know not everybody has the ability or the time to put in, but I mean, if you want to take the step forward and say, listen, this isn't just a hobby, this isn't for fun, I want to make this a career, then that is what you've got to go and do. You go and show me a golf pro that isn't hitting 1,000 balls a day type of thing. You know, it's like that is the reality. So the racing drivers, Jordan, Kelvin, how many laps they're putting in, both simulator and in the real cars. You've got to, if you want to be at the sharp end of the field, you've got to be spending time in the car doing lap after lap after lap. So it's cool. It's quite an exciting story that a guy can come to GT Sport so late in the game and be clocking times like this. It's unbelievable, because it just proves natural talent for sure. He's obviously coming off of a good base. He knows what he's doing, but he's putting in the hard work, and you're seeing the results.
Yeah, those two things together really make for an exciting recipe now. And I'm watching his throttle inputs, I'm watching his brake inputs. I mean, some very small, gentle inputs in a situation where it's not easy to make small, gentle inputs. And he's doing those things. Look at how wide he's running there. He got a penalty that time, but he is absolutely on the limit, absolutely on the ragged edge. He's now only 0.5 of a second up on second place, only 0.5 up on Ian, who's now in second position. Oh, I think he got kicked out. I think he got kicked out.
He's probably just gone back to the pits.
Okay, he's gone back to the pits, but I don't see him on the list of times there.
No, the list will only show the top 8. There he is.
There he is. Okay.
The pits. So Sir Ian, and also jumping up the leaderboard there. He has another Pace Motorsport livery, so Serious Sam. It's part of the Pace Motorsport team. And also that must be the best livery we've seen tonight.
Sure, beautiful. And the weird thing is, I usually don't like those kind of colors on a car. They don't suit many cars. But in this case, with the tire lettering and the Pace font over there, whoever chose that font needs a medal, man. I look forward to their liveries for the rest of the year. Dino back on the top spot there. Sir Ian, as we mentioned earlier on, jumped into second place there. DMR Jazz in third and RTA Leap in fourth position. Now we're on board with fifth place, man, just 1.6 seconds down. Serious Sam, they call him, in the very, very stunning Mercedes-Benz over there. That's Samir Rahman. Samir spending a bit of time setting this car up, but in a visual way. I could see there as the car gets a penalty. As the car turns in there, the back is very snappy. And as you were saying, Vanna, that brake bias setup, because these guys aren't allowed to change the setup, they change the brake bias. When they turn the car in like that, they need to use the brakes to get the car turned in. I saw a little bit of that now with Serious Sam.
Yeah, definitely. And also Serious Sam is also on a controller. Probably not for much longer. Like I said, he's currently leading our season 1, our Super Formula season championship we're having. And the first prize, we've actually had a fantastic sponsor come on board for that season. The first prize there is a 10,000 Rand rig from TGN Gaming Simulators. So hopefully that will set Samir well on his way to getting behind the wheel soon.
Awesome stuff. Samir on a controller at the moment. We're now on board with Andries in 9th position. Andries over there looking good in the silver, the more traditional sort of a look. That's Andries.
That is Merc. I mean, that's a classic Merc.
The silver arrows, eh?
Silver and nothing else. But it looks like he's going a little bit quicker. Still quite a way off. 2 seconds off the pace. But yeah, I'm kind of old school. I like cars that look like that.
Marius, that is the stock standard in-gun livery for this specific SLS Merc. So you can change your thing there.
Yeah, love it. Certainly the Mercedes-Benz colors, they become synonymous with silver, especially in their race cars. I mean, Marius, as you're saying, it just looks right, doesn't it?
Especially, I mean, I'm not thinking the new cars now. You spoke about the silver arrows. If you go back in history, all their race cars, I mean, that's pretty much what they were. And it was always that matte metal. It was literally the raw metal finish of the body. I love it. I think it just looks super, super clean and sleek, like a bullet. I think sometimes guys, I mean, it is fun, obviously, pumping your ride, literally, which is what the guys are doing, and they can get carried away with a livery. Like this is probably one of the wildest ones we've seen. Looks pretty cool, been dipped in candy floss. But I mean, I suppose that is part of the fun as well. You get to explore your creative side as well as your performance driving side of things. But Van, I wanted to find out the track we're going to for the opening round. That is a Gran Turismo home circuit, correct? That's like a game track.
It's a fantasy track, what they call in Gran Turismo a fantasy circuit, so it's not a real world circuit. It's based on an oval, but this is the infield. It includes an infield section, so it's got the fantastic banked last turn and first turn are both banked down the main straight, and then you turn into an infield section. So
a bit like those. Yeah, it's a bit like Indianapolis essentially.
Yeah, and a bit like the Daytona road course.
Yeah.
So it's going to be exciting to see that four-wheel drive AMG 845 drift around that track.
But what's cool as well, you were talking about that maybe Gran Turismo is a bit over-exaggerated in terms of the drafting, but I mean that's going to become a massive factor because I mean I remember playing in the game where you're going on for the last lap and you don't want to be leading. You know what I mean? Because you want the draft, so you can leapfrog the three guys ahead of you, type of thing. So you'll find a lot of that type of strategy will come into it because a circuit like that, there's going to be a lot of drafting.
That's such an interesting strategy. That not wanting. I was watching a little bit of NASCAR the other day. Not wanting to go into the last lap, being in the lead. I mean, how there's so much. People think that slipstream racing is easy. It certainly isn't. There's so much strategy and tactics that go into it. Just like today, we've got now Dino in first place, 43.8. Our fastest driver so far today, DMR Dino. Unbelievable stuff. Going faster than we thought possible earlier with beating that 43.9 we saw from Kyle. In second position, at least here, is RTA Sir Ian, 144.345. DMR Jazz in third place with 144.6. So the top four guys all in the 44s. And Serious Sam making up the top five, starting them off in the 45-second lap. Wow. These guys are keeping it tight here, keeping it tight.
I laughed you talking about India. I mean, all you got to do is speak to Brad Binder about Moto 3, because I mean, so many of the circuits are exactly like that as well. Do you want to lead out? Don't you? There's a lot of strategy involved in that. Vanna, what duration are they running for the races?
So the race format will be a 10-minute qualifying session, followed by a 40-minute race, endurance style race. So it'll be 40 minutes plus one lap.
Compulsory fuel stops?
There's nothing is compulsory. So if the guys manage to make it to the end on their fuel and tires, but we have tried to in the settings at least bring in one pit stop. So the fuel and tire setting usage rate has been set to a level where one stop will probably be required.
Yeah, I bet you the guys are going to be spending many hours running simulations now, because that becomes key. But I mean, all of that also goes out the window in terms of you have a bad qualifying, you don't start where you want to start. Is it a case of, when do you pit? Those sort of decisions. We were speaking about it yesterday now, because with their set of Corsa for the series, now they have put in a compulsory pit stop. So now the guys kind of have to start thinking different strategy. Where you're now almost wanting a spotter in the game to tell you when would be a good time to come in. You've got race engineers needed, so it's cool that you've put that in play as well. So the guys are kind of having to think about proper racecraft, that you can't just go and light the tires because they're just never going to lose grip. I'm glad that you guys have dialed in those sort of real race scenarios, because that is what we're trying to create here.
Absolutely.
Genuine article.
Absolutely, and I can tell you that there is a team in the I won't give away their secret, but there is a team in the GT Sport community that actually wrote their own software that does all those race simulations for them based on Gran Turismo. So they will literally, if there's a race where they can use 3 different compounds of tires, they will do a high fuel run on each of the tires, they'll do a low fuel run on each of the tires, they'll put in the parameters of the race, the track conditions, the time of day, and that software will actually determine when is the best time for them to stop.
Wow, that's amazing that you can do that nowadays. Before, you'd have to run through every single possible scenario.
No, but you know what you got to understand, Ernest. I mean, if you remember when they ran virtual Le Mans last year, Toyota used that as a proper test for the Le Mans team. So their race engineers and everybody were running the simulation, you know, in the virtual race, and that is what Kelvin and the guys were doing as well. Is that their race engineers were getting involved in the online side of things. It's incredible. So there's another spin-off to online racing, not just strapping yourself into a virtual car and going racing, but also the engineering side of things. And I think that for me is super cool. So great to hear that the guys have taken on that, where they're actually writing their own software, because that is how they're taking it properly seriously.
Well, don't you guys think it's a great testament to the actual developers of these games as well? Because ultimately, it's still a game. ACC is still a game. Although the last thing you want to do is go onto one of our WhatsApp community groups and talk about GT Sport as being a game, because you'll get slaughtered.
Yes.
But ultimately, the software behind it is exceptionally clever to bring in all those real life parameters,
all those values and things. And we're looking now at Stiganator in I think it was 7th position earlier on. That's Ellen van Graan, getting up close behind the car in front of him. These guys shouldn't be fighting it out, but it looks like they are, and we've got ourselves a little bit of excitement as he ducks it right now and has to do the same left and right again as they go towards the final complex section now. Second gear on the power. Who gets it first as they go around the long right-hander as towards the finish line? 180 k's an hour, fifth gear in the slipstream now. This is what we were talking about earlier on. He's going to try and get into the slipstream and now dive down the inside. Is he going to do it? No one is giving way. No one is backing out. This is not what they're supposed to do, but it's still exciting nonetheless. Oh, that was exciting stuff.
Yeah, you see, I think what he was hoping for was to get a good run and a good clean lap. Have a look. That is a perfect example of pulling out of the slipstream and then outbraking yourself completely, because you've arrived at the corner, 15, 20 kilometers an hour quicker and completely missing the braking point. So, that scrapped his lap. But I mean, that's fine. He can slowly start building up again for another good run.
It's an interesting psychology, because you've got a situation where it's a 30-minute qualifying, and as you said, Marius, it's a long time to qualify. So the guys, they might want to do one of those little dices because they can in this time to do it. But at the same time, once we get to the racing, it's only a 10-minute qualifying, and there they will actually want to get ahead so that they can have clean air and have that clean drive. We might see a couple of those similar battles happen, but unfold a lot quicker.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we saw that, if you remember last year, a couple of the circuits where the guys were complaining about, we couldn't find clean air for our qualifying, and I'm like, are you joking? The track is 6 kilometers long. Why are you guys, you think it's Formula One where you're backing it up 3 corners before and you're going to go? Come on. I mean, that doesn't happen. But I mean, I think with us running 14 cars in the field and all the tracks that we're going to, you're not going to have any of those situations. And hopefully the guys realize that, go out, leave a little gap. And when you are in the pro class or in the second division down, everyone's kind of running a very similar pace. So the guys shouldn't be falling over each other. If you all go out 14 oaks, leave each other with a bit of a gap, you'll be able to get a clean run and set up your best lap time. And that is what it's about. So far the guys really have been behaving. I think they also want to have a bit of fun. I think they're probably also getting bored of going lap after lap after lap, and then suddenly they see a car in front of them and it's like, let's have a bit of a go, So
the old red mist.
100%. The visor down, the brain disengages. It's lovely.
I love it though. It's so weird how that really does happen, and we're seeing it over and over. One does see it over and over, whether it's at the local circuit or on your PC, on your PlayStation circuit. It certainly does happen. Dino though, separating himself from the pack with a 143.8.
Yeah, it's a great time, eh? Really, that is quick. That is quick. And we've got about 7 minutes left in this qualifying, and then we'll have a pretty good idea of who our top 14 are at this stage. But like you said earlier, and it's not provisional, because we still got a couple of other guys that couldn't make the session tonight that'll be posting lap times.
Speaking of one of those guys is the person that's giving us all this inside information. Werner,
thank heavens.
Yes. Thank you for being here. Firstly.
Yeah, absolute pleasure. I'll host a it'll probably only be a single lobby tomorrow night, just for half an hour quickly. And then there's a handful of guys that couldn't make tonight that will just jump tomorrow, and I'll be one of them as well. So I'll follow all the same rules and set my time as well.
And where will you be, Werner? Where do you think?
If I look at my best that I've managed to do so far, I'm going to be completely open and honest. It doesn't matter because this is the last division, so I know some of the guys are quite secretive. I've managed to do a 44.6.
Yeah.
So the guys are.
You'll be on the edge. You'll be in
very much
Division 1.
the edge. Very much the edge of Division 1. Yeah. So within our team, the mention earlier today was a 44.8 will probably get you into Division 1. Look at the times. Currently, Leap is on that 44.8. On the borderline there, and I think probably Serious Sam. He's with a 45.1. He probably still, if I just do quick maths in my head, probably still be in Division 1 as well. So that's around about the times we're looking at. But also doing it in a lobby with a half an hour time limit is a lot different than doing 20 laps around the track and you've got at your own time and no pressure, no stress.
Sure. Yeah, but I mean, but that's why I'm glad about the 10 minutes in the race, because Ernest and I were talking about it earlier. That does ramp things up completely. I mean, I know last year I was bitching and moaning quite a bit because I hate this, delete, poof, back to the pits you go vibe, because that doesn't happen. And I'd like to see a change in these online simulations that creates what happens in the real world. Because if you do cock it up, there's no penalty. There is no punishment for it, and it'd be nice for that to become part of the mentality that goes into a qualifying session. But certainly you guys going from 30 minutes to 10 minutes is going to change things completely.
And another element there, ACC, I know that you can set your starting fuel for a session, so you can literally have a separate qualifying setup where you run low fuel, new tires. The qualifying sessions we will be running will be based on the race settings. So in other words, the same fuel and tire wear rates will be used in our qualifying. So the guys will literally spend the entire 10 minutes out on track. If you go back to pits, that'll reset you and you'll start on your highest fuel level.
Wow.
You will see the guys running maybe 2 or 3 laps. So they'll probably do an out lap, do a banker lap, and an in lap, and then don't refuel, put on new tires, and then go flat out for the last 2 or 3 laps until the time the qualifying session ends up. So it adds a very, very nice element to it. And up until the last lap, you are not secured of your grid position, because anybody behind you can still do a fast lap.
That's cool.
How does that work with damage then, Werner? What if you have a big bang on laps 3 or 4?
You will need to go into the pits, but then you have the option to not refuel. So you'll have to go into the pits for the damage to be repaired. It's not like ACC where you have to wait 3 or 4 minutes depending on the severity of the damage. It's basically 5 or 6 seconds stationary will repair all your damage.
It's like the mechanic that I go to. He'll say he repairs the car.
But then charges you for 3 days work.
Yeah, I wish I had those magic elves working on my cars as well. That'd be awesome, eh?
We were on there with Dino. Sorry. I just wanted to comment on Dino's precision is it's laser. It's laser. He's really able to nail those laps, and now has separated himself. He's a half a second ahead. I mean, this guy is the real deal.
Yeah, he's the car is where it needs to be on every single one of the corners. I mean, I was watching the long right hand and all of these. These are corners that require such a fine setup. Your throttle input is crucial here. And listen, no twitching, no fighting the car. I know it looks great to see a car going sideways, but anybody that races knows the minute you're going sideways, it's flipping slow, except for Jason Webb, of course. but then you go and do a different form of motorsport. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah, it's not about show pony and looking good going sideways. Yeah, it's about keeping the car in a straight line as much as possible.
100%. Those slip angles need to be kept to a minimum, as RTA Sir Ian, half a second down, and then we saw some of that. But certainly this car does move around a bit more, though, doesn't it? Just talking about those slip angles. This car does rotate a little bit on the center axis. And as someone that I'm sure has spent some time with Marius, I've sat in this car and I've driven the GTS and all this other. You feel like you're sitting square in the middle of those wheels. You know what I mean? With the long bonnet, but you're down the middle of the car.
But the SLS for me actually feels a lot. I mean, you literally did feel like you're sitting on the rear axle. And that is what made it very, very difficult for.
Yeah, I'm thinking maybe of the GT more in that
Yeah,
case.
you are. So what the car we saw in the previous round, the new spec,
Yes.
you just have a look at the proportions. You literally are more centered in the car, and that's why it's a lot. It's better behaved as an all-round car. It's amazing performance-wise because of technology and.
Yes.
But with this SLS, you really were sitting on the rear axle, and that's what made it very, very tricky. Because by the time you got a feeling for what was going on, it was just too late. So very, very difficult car to set up and drive fast on the edge. You've got to have a big set of balls.
Well, Dino certainly does have a set of those. He brought those with him today, that's for sure.
He did.
Half a second.
I was going to say, how do you know?
by the times only. Half a second out is Dino on Sir Ian. Unbelievable stuff. And only a 10th behind that is DMR Jazz. So that gap for me is quite telling. A 10th down, another 10th down is Leap, and then Serious Sam. Oh my goodness. And then Ninja as well. Just look at how close the rest of them are, other than unfortunately 12th place, 3 seconds down, still some time in it though. But certainly the top 11 guys, it's very, very tight.
Yeah, the
Top 10
mid-packs,
guys.
the mid-packs are a lot closer than what we've seen in the others. The others, we had like tighter battles up top, and then some guys way off the pace. But yeah, I'm surprised. None of us really. Look, I mean, obviously we don't know these guys. Van has been helping us out, but I think maybe even Vanna was a bit surprised with Dino's time because that was properly fast. And I think at this stage, I don't know if anybody in the little forums tomorrow are going to be able to compete with that time. I think this will be your fastest qualifier when we do go into our first race.
Well, Dino,
Marius, undoubtedly this will be the fastest time we'll see throughout the qualifier.
qualifying's done, guys. That is it. We got to wrap it up here. We can chat about this in a moment. But wow, what a qualifying it has been. We'll chat to you guys shortly after the break. DMR Dino does it with a time of 1:43.8 seconds. Behind him, RTA Sir Ian with a 1:44.3. And just look at how close the rest of the pack is, all the way back down to 10th position with a 45.8. I mean, this is such close racing. And I mean, look at those sector times as well. Certainly Dino laying down the law and doing it in the last session of the night. Nobody saw this coming. Marius, this is how you want to do it. This is how you want to sneak into that top spot and cement it. It's done now. We've got a couple more guys tomorrow qualifying, but we've been tipped by Werner saying that those guys shouldn't be upsetting the apple cart at the front of the grid. DMR Dino does it in the third session.
Yeah, listen, that was cool. I'm glad you brought up what Werner was saying during the ad break. We were talking about it and just trying to get some insight from him. And yeah, he reckons, listen, I mean, well-deserved, Dino, because he's the guy that's putting in maximum hours and reaping the reward. So really, really good lap time. So if we put all the sessions together, there's a 43.8 and a 43.9. Nothing in it between our two fastest guys across 3 30-minute sessions. But I really do get excited because I think Vanna was alluding to the fact that like a 44.8 is going to see you seeded for Division 1. And yeah, I think it's going to be super close. And looking at that first race on the 22nd of March, it's obviously on one of the Gran Turismo fantasy tracks, and they're going to be in the A45 AMG all-wheel drive running on road tires. So that for me is super cool as well, because it's going to be a real test in that 40-minute race of how they look after the road tires. Lots of four-wheel drifting and obviously fuel that they've got to sit and consider as well. So there's the Blue Moon circuit that he's talking about, which is pretty cool. It's got banked corners, and then obviously the infield section. So very much like what we spoke about on the Daytona circuit. So we talk about drafting. Vanna was telling us how drafting is a real deal in Gran Turismo. So I think you're going to have some cracking racing on the 22nd of March. We're obviously going racing on the 21st as well with the Seca Corsa, and we're starting at Imola, which is a classic track. This is a fantasy track for Gran Turismo, is the Blue Moon circuit, but it's going to be a great weekend in 2 weeks' time.
Van, with regard to the A45, we're looking at the circuit now. I haven't turned a lap on the circuit, but I look forward to doing that in the coming days. We just saw the ad for the A45 as well. I mean, how does that car cope around these long sweeping curves over here?
Surprisingly well in running and testing, to determine what our tire and fuel wear rates should be. That car is so much fun around this track. The four-wheel drive makes it really stick around the sweeping bends and the corners. And I can tell you, the only corner you need to look at in this entire race is going to be that hairpin towards the end of the lap, because turn 1 is a very fast left-hander. Turn 2, 3, and 4 is all sweeping and flowing into each other, heading down that straight, and the guys will be using the slipstream to full effect, braking down to second gear for that hairpin. So all the action is going to be happening in there, and the track is extremely wide, so you might see 4 guys side by side going into that hairpin corner. It's going to be fantastic racing.
It looks a little bit like a controller.
It does actually. I only noticed that now. Bit of a shoe maybe.
Yeah.
It reminds me a little bit of a Brands Hatch as well, at least in looks. We'll have to see. I'm going to spend some time on the circuit before that race to try and get to know it a little bit and see what it's like. But
why don't you enter tomorrow?
Hey, maybe I should.
My console, my flipping PlayStation's too old, and so is my Gran Turismo.
I'll need to go find a PlayStation first, but we're working on that. Now that I'm watching you guys go around on GT, I mean, I play Xbox, I play Forza on my Xbox console, and then I play a Seca Corsa. But now watching you guys in GT reminds me of the old days, and I definitely want to jump on again. But from what I've seen here, the times are very competitive, and that's what I think is going to make this exciting going into round 1. The circuit, the way you were describing the circuit, lots of places to overtake and specific places to overtake. But the closeness of the qualifying we saw today, with Kyle and Dino being separated by just 1/10 of a second, and them then being the only 2 in that bracket, I mean, it's going to be close. It's going to be close.
I think the top 11 or 12 are probably only separated by a second overall.
Yeah.
Unbelievable stuff then. Unbelievable stuff.
That would sound about right. Yeah. It's going to be a cracker, eh?
Going to be a cracker, and thanks to Mercedes-Benz for making this possible. ATK Arena, of course, Kailami 9-hour MSA. We are heading to Blue Moon, folks, and we just got to figure out who are the fastest guys in that group and confirm that for Division 1 so that we can have our first competitive race. Marius, any final thoughts from you, and then over to you, Werner?
I'm over the moon to go racing at Blue Moon, and I'm over the moon that we've got Gran Turismo as part of the ATK Pro Series for 2021. I think it's cool that we've diversified like this. I think it's obviously great having Mercedes-Benz on board, and that we now have 6 rounds of racing in a whole variety of Mercedes-Benz cars where the drivers are kind of not saying, well, I was in a bad car. Well, they're not. They're all in a great car. They're all in the same car. They're all on the same track at the same day. I think that's great.
Van, over to you. Any final words from you? Thanks so much for joining us. I mean, you've been amazing.
Guys, just it's a pleasure. Thanks for having us and for having me, and just also thank you to all the sponsors and partners for bringing Gran Turismo Sport on board with us. GTS SA, we've been looking for this kind of opportunity for a long time, and we definitely are enjoying the exposure we're getting and the support that you guys have given us, and the wonderful production being put together. So thank you very much for allowing me to be part of tonight. It really was a lot of fun.
I certainly feel like this is a match made for sure. Things have worked out well tonight. Very tight racing. I look forward to the first round. That's it from us, folks. We'll see you at round 1, and look out for those results on our socials. My name is Ernest Page, joined by Marius and Werner tonight. We'll see you guys at round 1. Cheers.